Chapter 292. Fatty Wei, hurry up and make a trip down the mountain. A pigeon soared into the sky from the Wang family residence, heading toward the Kunwa training camp. This was the only message on the pigeon. At the end of the message, a tri-dot ink mark was added on the letter. This was the signal that Wang Chong and Wei Hao had agreed upon. There was no better middleman than Wei Hao. As a Duke of the Tang dynasty, Wei Hao's background wasn't inferior to Duke of Lu's. In fact, he might even be superior. Sending Wei Hao out would allow the Duke of Lu residents to retain some face. Furthermore, they were both scions of prestigious clans, and they were no longer the profligate scions of the past. It was about time for Wei Hao to do the things that scions of prestigious clans should do. Coming. The reply from Kunwa training camp soon arrived. On the letter were 2 large words written in flamboyant calligraphy, or rather, incomparably ugly. Wei Hao's calligraphy was as ugly as Wang Chong's. By the time the pigeon arrived, Wei Hao was already on his way. He didn't ask why, nor did he make any excuses. Wei Hao had complete trust in Wang Chong. As long as he called out to him, he would come over immediately. This was what brothers were like. Wang Chong, you were looking for me? It was nearing evening, and Wei Hao entered the Wang family residence. Without even wiping off the sweat on his forehead, he headed straight for Wang Chong's study. How is it? Brother, I'm here quickly. I saw the mark on the letter. It's extremely urgent, so I didn't rush over immediately. Wei Hao stood at the door with his hands on the door frame. He grinned excitedly. He knew that Wang Chong had left the mountain. They were brothers, and it wasn't the first day that he had known Wang Chong. Wei Hao was willing to bet that something must have happened in the capital. Otherwise, Wang Chong wouldn't have called for him. It's not that urgent, but there's something important. Wang Chong smiled. Ever since he was young, whether it was his past life or this life, he had always liked this kind of personality. He wouldn't say anything even if he had to risk his life. Do you still remember Su Han from White Tiger Peak? The one who shares a room with me. Wang Chong went straight to the point and told him everything he knew about Su Han. Is that him? Wei Hao stepped into the room and took a sip of water. His face was also filled with surprise. In the capital, Duke of Lu has always kept a low profile. How did Su Han get involved with Duke of Lu? He knew about the block of ice on White Tiger Peak. They were not to be trifled with, and were not easy to deal with. Many people avoided him when they saw him. Wei Hao didn't expect Wang Chong to look for him. That's exactly what I want to know. This is also the main reason why I called you here. Help me arrange an appointment with the second son of the Duke of Lu. I want to know what is going on here. Wang Chong said, All right, leave this matter to me. It just so happens that my clan has some dealings with the Duke of Lu. I'll help you find out more about it. Without any hesitation, Wei Hao stood up and left. Wei Hao left in the evening, and Wang Chong thought that he would return soon. However, he didn't expect that Wei Hao would still be nowhere to be seen. Wang Chong sent someone to investigate, and all he heard was that Wei Hao had made an appointment with the young master of the Li clan to reserve the entire tavern. No one was allowed to enter, and no one was allowed to leave. Gongzi, should we send someone to take a look? Isn't this a little too long for a meeting? In the study, the eagle stood before Wang Chong and asked. There's no need for that. This is the territory of the Son of Heaven, and Wei Hao is the son of Duke of Wei. The Duke of Lu won't do anything to him. Seated behind his desk, Wang Chong waved his hands and said authoritatively, Don't use a person you doubt, and don't doubt a person you use. This matter involved the great clans of 3 empires, and Wang Chong believed that the Duke of Lu wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Just wait patiently. He will come out sooner or later. After saying these words, Wang Chong closed his eyes. Time slowly passed, and 4 hours later, a commotion suddenly sounded outside. Before the person could even be seen, a loud exclamation sounded. Wang Chong, Wang Chong! Inconceivable, inconceivable! Do you know what I just heard? Accompanied by the eagle, Wei Hao hurried into Wang Chong's study. His eyes were bright, and even in the darkness they glowed brightly. After returning from the Kunwa training camp, and chatting with the son of Duke of Lu late into the night, not only did Wei Hao not feel fatigued, he even seemed energetic. Did the son of Duke of Lu say anything? Wang Chong suddenly felt energized, and his sleepiness was swept away. Raising a finger, he gestured to the empty seat opposite him, indicating for Wei Hao to sit down. Wang Chong, I finally know what Su Hanshan is looking for in the Duke of Lu residence. He's looking for his younger sister. Can you imagine? That fellow actually has a younger sister. Wei Hao exclaimed in astonishment. Wang Chong and the eagle glanced at each other, and both of them were astonished. Wei Gongzi, you can't be thinking of saying that the Duke of Lu residence forcefully abducted a lady and oppressed the kind-hearted. That Li Bing of the Duke of Lu clan fell in love with that Su Gongzi's younger sister and forcefully abducted her into the residence, right? Yet, the Duke of Lu residence tried to kill that Su Gongzi out of fear that this scandal would spread? The eagle asked in bewilderment. Even though he was the one who brought Wei Hao into the residence, due to the lack of time, he didn't have the time to understand the situation. Hee. It would be great if it's really a show where the scions of nobility abduct a lady. Things are 100 times more complicated than that. Wei Hao chuckled as he crossed his legs, intentionally keeping Wang Chong in suspense. Isn't that the case? Wang Chong said, ignoring the gleeful look on that lad's face that was asking for a beating. Hee, you don't know, right? You might be scared to death if I tell you. Do you know that the real Duke of Lu should be that Su Hanshan? Wei Hao gleefully tossed out an earth-shattering piece of news. How is that possible? Wang Chong widened his eyes in shock. He knew of the grudge between Su Hanshan and the Duke of Lu residence, but Wei Hao's words were truly a miraculous twist. This was especially so considering that it was coming from the Duke of Lu residence, which made it even more unbelievable. Wang Chong's instinctive reaction was disbelief. Wei Hao, what's going on? Tell me the details of your meeting with Duke of Lu Gongzi. Don't keep me in suspense. Wang Chong straightened his back and said earnestly. He felt that he had probably come into contact with Su Hanshan's true secret. If he could unravel this secret, he might be able to open up Su Hanshan's path to becoming a great general. He would be able to bring out all of his potential and allow him to reach heights that he couldn't reach in his previous life. It's a long story. That fellow from the Duke of Lu residence was so hesitant, and he refused to say anything. He thought that Su Hanshan had said something to you, so he ended up spilling the beans himself. Seeing the seriousness in Wang Chong's words, Wei Hao didn't dare to continue keeping him in suspense. Thus, he revealed everything that he had heard in the tavern. The grudge between the Duke of Lu residence and Su Hanshan's lineage could be traced back to 3 generations ago, when the Tang dynasty was under Emperor Gaozong. Even though the Duke of Lu residence and Su Hanshan's lineage hated each other so much, 3 generations ago, the two were best friends. Su Hanshan wasn't an outsider either. He was a citizen of the capital. Emperor Gaozong's generation was a rare talent. His martial arts couldn't be said to be weak, but he was definitely not an extraordinary figure. Furthermore, he couldn't be compared to the current Holy Emperor. Given Emperor Gaozong's talent, it was easy to imagine the dangers he faced before he ascended to the throne. Once Gaozong fell into danger and fainted, it was Su Hanshan's ancestor Su Feng who discovered him in time, saved him, and brought him out of danger. Su Feng didn't tell anyone about this matter, other than his only friend. That was the ancestor of the Duke of Lu residence. Gaozong was one of the few emperors of the Tang dynasty. He was indebted to another for saving his life, so he wanted to confer him the title of duke. However, in his days, Gaozong mistook Su Feng's friend for the person who saved him. On top of that, Su Feng's friend was blinded by greed. Even though he knew that His Majesty was mistaken, under the allure of the title of duke, he still accepted the matter. On the other hand, Su Hanshan's grandfather Su Feng was kept in the dark. By the time he found out, the matter was already settled. On the other hand, Su Feng's friend was afraid that the matter would be exposed, so he imprisoned Su Feng. The latter had always viewed the other party as a close friend, and he felt deeply humiliated by the other party. Although Su Feng's friend finally felt guilty and let him out, Su Feng's friend still let him out. However, Su Feng still died of grief and indignation. This was the origin of the grudge between Su Hanshan's lineage and the Duke of Lu residence. An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. How could Su Feng as a son tolerate the humiliation and indignation that he suffered. Even though a lawsuit was filed, and the matter was brought up to the royal court, the emperor's words were golden. But after all, the emperor's words were like gold and jade. Even if he had recognized the wrong person, he could only make the best of the mistake. Even though Su Feng's son was rewarded, there was no way he would accept it. Just like that, this matter became a deadlock. As such, there was no room for reconciliation between the two clans. After Su Feng's son failed in his mission, he fled the capital. Thus, he passed his will down to his son, Su Hanshan. This was already the third generation. The Su clan passed his will down to his son, never forgetting to seek vengeance. On the other hand, Duke of Lu's lineage didn't sit idly by either. They passed down the matter as well. Even though they were in the wrong, they couldn't just sit idly by and allow others to place a knife against their neck. The Duke of Lu residents also did something as well. Somehow, they managed to find the hiding place of Su Hanshan and his brother, and they dispatched a group of men to capture Su Hanshan's younger sister. As for Su Hanshan, no one knew what he was doing back then. In any case, he wasn't on the mountain, so he managed to escape this calamity. The Duke of Lu residents didn't do anything to his younger sister after capturing her. She still stayed there with good food and drinks, and she was also provided with special maids to serve her. Other than the fact that she couldn't move freely, it was much better than living in the mountains. On top of that, no one in the Duke of Lu residence harbored any ill intentions toward her. The Duke of Lu residence's thoughts were simple as well. Since the grudge between the two clans couldn't be resolved, they would use his younger sister as a hostage. This way, Su Hanshan would have some reservations, and he would be able to prevent himself from doing something as extreme as the previous generation. However, the Su clan and the Duke of Lu residence weren't just enemies. In fact, the Duke of Lu residence's standing was due to Su Feng. The ancestor of the Duke of Lu residence had also explained these matters in detail in his family letter. Thus, there was no need for them to do anything to the young lady. They were still extremely polite, not offending her at all. Chapter 293. To think that the truth would be like this. It's no wonder why Su Hanshan seemed to have a knot in his heart in his previous life, causing him to be unable to become an imperial great general and become the greatest loss of the Central Plains. Hearing Wei Hao's words, Wang Chong fell into a long period of silence. Those seniors from back then had many opinions about Su Hanshan. Without a doubt, his fall was a heart-wrenching one. This person was capable, daring, and decisive. Even those who disliked him had to admit that Su Hanshan was an outstanding commander. Wherever he stood, even if the enemy had 1,000 men, the army by his side would never back down. As long as Su Hanshan wasn't afraid, as long as Su Hanshan was still standing there, his soldiers would never fear him. In that chaotic world, to his empress, Su Hanshan had always been the safest person in the world. He advanced and retreated together with all of his soldiers. And in the end, Su Hanshan fulfilled his promise to his soldiers. He and his most powerful army had perished together on the battlefield. This was a man worthy of respect, a true soldier, a great general of the empire. Even though he didn't manage to reach that step in the end, back then, when Wang Chong heard of Su Hanshan's death, his heart was also filled with sorrow. This was also the reason why Wang Chong was determined to help Su Hanshan in this life. Of all the people in the Kunwa training camp, Su Hanshan was the one Wang Chong wanted to help the most, the one who wanted to change his fate the most. However, this wasn't something that outsiders could talk about. Wang Chong couldn't, and couldn't possibly talk about it to outsiders. The Duke of Lu's lineage sure knows how to talk. I don't believe that the truth is as they say. My clan does have some dealings with the Duke of Lu residents. But despite being in the capital for so long, I still don't know how the Li clan obtained their position as Duke of Lu. How shameful. Wei Hao said disdainfully as he leaned back. He valued his brothers and friends the most. Therefore, as soon as Wang Chong sent him a letter and a sentence, he directly left the Kunwa training camp without asking why. After rushing for several hours, without any hesitation, he immediately helped Wang Chong arrange an appointment with the young master of the Duke of Lu clan. Now that he was exhausted, There was not a single word of complaint. With Wei Hao's personality, he hated people who betrayed and coveted their brothers. The truth is hard for us outsiders to say. It's normal that you haven't heard about it. After all, this matter involved Emperor Gaozong. It's not the kind of thing that goes around. However, this matter also explains why the Duke of Lu residence is keeping such a low profile. Wang Chang's index finger tapped on the table. Da-da-da. There were many dukes in the Tang dynasty. Most of them chose to keep a low profile after the death of their ancestors, staying away from politics to protect themselves. Even so, the Duke of Lu residence was one of the more discreet dukes who preferred to protect themselves. In fact, the Duke of Lu residence even planted a circle of trees outside the high walls. Very few people in the capital were aware of the existence of the Duke of Lu residence. Now that he thought about it, there must be a reason behind it. Not many people in the lower echelons knew that the nobility of the Duke of Lu's lineage was a dishonorable title. However, the royal court should have known about it. It was just that no one mentioned it out of fear of Emperor Gaozong. The Duke of Lu lineage also knew about it, which was why they chose to keep such a low profile. Even though I don't agree with the Duke of Lu lineage, their words aren't without reason. The grudge between the two clans is a matter of their grandfather's generation, and the people involved are already dead. Their generation is already the third generation, so it has nothing to do with the matter back then. Furthermore, even though Su Hanshan's grandfather passed away in anger, his father accompanied them in passing. This is different from ordinary vendettas, Wang Chong said. But Su Hanshan probably won't think so, Wei Hao said. But compared to that matter, I believe that there's something else that he's more concerned about. Furthermore, we will soon know whether the Duke of Lu lineage is speaking the truth or not, whether they are just feigning civility, and whether they are truly intent on changing for the better. Bring me a brush. Wang Chong rolled up his sleeves, and with a flick of his wrist, he subconsciously reached for a brush. But after a moment of hesitation, he smiled bitterly and drew it back. The eagle, how's your handwriting? Wang Chong suddenly turned to look at the eagle and asked. Ah, the latter exclaimed, as though he had just awoken from a dream. Then a perplexed look appeared on his face. Our handwriting is ugly, so Wang Chong asked you to write for him, Wei Hao said. Is that so? Because I often had to transcribe messages in the past. I practiced my handwriting for a period of time, so it's still passable. The eagle didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This young master of his was good at everything, and he had his own views on everything he did. However, this handwriting of his was extremely ugly, and it was truly incomprehensible. Duke Jiu was a virtuous minister of the Tang dynasty. Naturally, Wang Chong knew what the eagle was thinking. He was also embarrassed about this matter, so he hurriedly chuckled and changed the topic. After taking an inkstone and grinding the ink, Wang Chong explained the contents of the letter, while the eagle wrote it down. Finally, he stamped the Wang clan's seal on the letter, and a guard of the Wang clan sent it to the Duke of Lu residence. This was the official way for the clans to communicate with one another, and carrier pigeons were forbidden. On the other hand, with the Wang clan's seal on the letter, regardless of whether the letter was written by Wang Chong or not, the Duke of Lu would be representing the entire Wang clan. Wang Chong's letter was simple, and there was only a single content. In the name of the Wang clan, he hoped that the Duke of Lu residence would hand over Su Hanshan's younger sister, the girl whom the Duke of Lu residence had kidnapped, to the Wang clan. Regardless of whether the Duke of Lu residence's words were true or not, they would know once they saw the girl. If the girl was indeed mistreated, there was nothing Wang Chong could do about it. The grudge between Su Hanshan and the Duke of Lu residence was irreconcilable. Even though the current Su Hanshan looked like a joke, the future Su Hanshan would definitely be able to make the Duke of Lu residence weep. If the girl was still a virgin and had been treated well, it would mean that the Duke of Lu residence wasn't lying, and there was still a chance that the matter could be resolved. Roughly a day after the letter was sent out, a lady was sent out from the Duke of Lu residence. Wang Chong didn't meet the lady, because she was sent to the Kunwa training camp by the guards of the Duke of Lu residence. Along with the lady were 2 chests of gold and a letter. The gold was left behind, but the letter was taken away. After the lady appeared outside the Kunwa training camp, she vanished into thin air. No one knew where she went. All right. This matter is finally resolved. It seems like the Duke of Lu's men weren't lying. They didn't mistreat that lady. Wang Chong stood up and stretched his back lazily. The goodwill of the Duke of Lu residence wasn't without a bottom line. He had used the name of the King of Song and the Wang clan to help Su Hanshan get the girl back, so it was only right for him to express some goodwill. Help me make an appointment with the eldest son of the Duke of Lu, Li Bing, Wang Chong said. His big brother wasn't around, and his second brother was in the imperial prison. At this moment, he was the eldest son of the Wang clan. After this matter, Wang Chong specially made an appointment with the eldest son of the Duke of Lu, Li Bing, at his royal jade pavilion to express his gratitude. Just like that, this matter came to an end. Gongzi, I still don't understand. That day at the Duke of Lu residence, even my eagles weren't able to tell that it was a trap. Gongzi, how did you know? When everything was over, standing in the courtyard of the Wang family residence, looking at the flower beds and ponds before the corridor, the eagle couldn't help but voice the doubts in his heart. That day, if they had advanced any further, they would have been discovered. The world beyond and beyond the high walls were two completely different worlds. If Wang Chong had been trapped within the high walls, even if he were to die, the Duke of Lu residence could claim that nothing had happened. After all, why would the grandson of Duke Jiao appear in the Duke of Lu residence? If the Wang clan didn't explain this matter clearly, they wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Yet, before the duo could get close, Wang Chong had already noticed the danger and dodged the attack. The eagles and sparrows that you have trained are already very intelligent. However, there are some things that the eyes of a bird can't see. Wang Chong smiled. That incident happened a few days ago, and the eagle was still brooding over it. Clearly, he was still very concerned about it. However, the eagle didn't know that there was another reason why he was able to see through the trap. The Tang dynasty has a history of more than 200 years, and there are many scions in the capital. No one knows all of them, but if you hang around here often, you'll more or less hear about them, or have heard some things about them, or have even caught a glimpse of them. Wang Chong explained. Those from the Duke of Lu residence are considered to be rather low profile. The scions of their clan rarely interact with others, but in certain aspects, they are rather high profile. But in some ways they're quite high profile. Whether it's the eldest son, Li Bing, or the second son, Li Nian, who Wei Hao went to meet, or young master, they all bring a lot of guards with them when they travel. On top of that, the guards around them are completely different from the guards around scions like us. They are true experts that the Duke of Lu found from the sections. It feels as though they are always on guard against something, so no one really interacts with them. Wang Chong said. The eagle nodded. He recalled the two formidable profound martial realm experts by Li Bing's side that day in the forest. Li Bing brought these experts with him, and they almost never left his side. He even brought them with him when he met Gongzi. Back then, when Wei Hao met with the second son of Duke of Lu, Li Nian, he was the same. In this aspect, the rumors weren't wrong. But of course, the people in the capital probably didn't expect that the rumors weren't wrong at all. The members of the Duke of Lu clan were guarding against others. They were guarding against Su Hanshan. You said that the room of the Duke of Lu Gongzi was brightly lit that day, but there wasn't a single guard outside. People like them who bring profound martial realm experts with them when they travel, how could they not even leave a single guard at the door? Since you have already confirmed that it was the room of the Duke of Lu Gongzi, there can only be one possibility. That is, it was a trap. Thinking about it, Su Hanshan had been searching the Duke of Lu residence for several days straight, but he didn't seem to be in a place where there was no one around. Thus, there's no doubt about it. In truth, he was also astonished that day, but after confirming that it was the room of the Duke of Lu Gongzi, Wang Chong immediately retreated without any hesitation. These weren't things that the eagles and sparrows could see through. From this point of view, it could be said that his experience as a playboy in the capital was not completely useless. After saying those words to the eagle, Wang Chong flung his sleeves and walked out of the corridor. At the entrance of the Wang family residence, a carriage was waiting for him. Let's go, Wang Chong said to the coachman who had been waiting for a long time before stepping into the carriage. Now that the matter in the capital had come to an end, it was about time for him to return to the Kunwa training camp. Chapter 294. The mountains in the vicinity of Kunwa training camp were steep and treacherous. At the edge of the training camp, on a path that one had to pass through, a slender figure stood alone. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and he exuded a cold and lonely aura. From afar, he looked like an iceberg, standing there motionlessly, as though waiting for something. Brother Su. This was the first scene that Wang Chong saw when he arrived at the foot of the mountain. Su Hanshan stood there, seemingly waiting for a very long time already. Thank you. Standing at the edge of the cliff, Su Hanshan's eyes flickered. Ignoring Wang Chong's greeting, he spoke 3 words. How is your sister? Wang Chong was taken aback. Then, he understood that Su Hanshan was here for his sister. He couldn't help but smile. Su Hanshan's personality was probably unchangeable. No matter who he was in front of, he would always be so distant. But even so, Wang Chong realized that every time Su Hanshan saw him, he could sense that his complexion was much more relaxed. I owe you a favor, and I owe you a life, Su Hanshan said seriously. If you have any requests, feel free to tell me, be it a mountain of blades or a sea of fire. Even if it means my life, I will do it for you. This was the longest sentence that Su Hanshan had spoken to Wang Chong in the past 3 to 4 months. Su Hanshan seemed to have prepared this sentence for a long time. As the saying goes, a gentleman keeps his word. Su Hanshan didn't owe anyone favors, nor did he make promises easily. But if he made a promise, he would do it even if it meant his death. Su Hanshan had clearly thought for a long time before coming to this decision. Su Hanshan never wanted to owe anyone anything. But he couldn't reject the help he was receiving from others. He could ignore himself, but he couldn't ignore his sister. She was his only kin in this world. It's not as serious as you say. Wang Chong was taken aback for a moment before he smiled. Su Hanshan seemed to have been conflicted for a long time. He was probably thinking too much. He really didn't have anything to ask of him. However, if there was really a request, Wang Chong did have one. However, if you really want to repay me, you only need to promise me one thing. To the west of Longxi, there's a place called Chicken Crowing Mountain. Promise me, no matter what happens, you can't go near that place. Ridiculous. Su Hanshan was stunned for a moment before he flung his sleeves and left. He never made promises easily, but Wang Chong's request obviously meant nothing to him. Since Wang Chong didn't want to say it, he couldn't force him. Su Hanshan soon disappeared in the direction of the main peak of the Kunwa training camp. As Wang Chong watched his back slowly disappear into the distance, the smile on his lips slowly disappeared, and a trace of gloominess flashed across his eyes. It was impossible for Su Hanshan to know that he was being serious. Wang Chong naturally couldn't tell him that this chicken crowing mountain that he had never heard of would be the place where he would die in battle. That place was still called Chicken Crowing Mountain now, but in the future, it would be known as the Great General Mountain. Of all the battlefields in the Central Plains, there weren't many that were more famous than that small mountain. Su Hanshan was the final great general of the Tang dynasty. Whoosh! Exhaling deeply, Wang Chong tossed aside the distracting thoughts in his mind and walked forward. The Kunwa training camp was bustling with activity. It had been more than 10 days since Wang Chong left, and the atmosphere seemed even livelier. Examinees were lined up in a row, shooting at their targets on the archery field. They were even equipped with armor for the battlefield. Some of the examinees even blindfolded one of their eyes to practice how to shoot arrows in the event that their only eye was injured. There were at least 30 to 40 times the number of examinees in the archery field, and most of them were fighting in pairs. Some of them were even fighting 1 against 2, 3, or even 5 at the same time. From the looks of it, they were extremely skilled. There were also clear differences in the weapons they were wielding: bamboo sabers and bamboo swords, wooden sabers and wooden swords, blunt sabers and bronze sabers, as well as the sharpened weapons. The more realistic the weapon was, the more dangerous the training would be. It has only been 3 to 4 months since the opening of the training camp, and it's already starting to show its true form. Wang Chong thought as he walked through the bustling training camp. At the very start, the Kumwa training camp was just a mountain, but now it was starting to show its true form. After traversing through half of the training camp, Wang Chong didn't return to his residence. Instead, he turned around and walked past the White Tiger Peak, heading in another direction. He was almost done with his preparations in the Kumwa training camp. Now it was time for him to move on to the next step. Gongzi, halfway up the mountain, a group of people had been waiting for a long time. Their expressions were rather respectful. They were Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Chen Burang, Sun Jiming, Gao Feng, Nie Yen Su Qi, and the others. They had already received news of Wang Chong's arrival through pigeons, and they were already waiting here. Everyone had a solemn expression on their faces. The atmosphere was much more solemn than usual as well. They had noticed Wang Chong's residence from the very first day of construction. Even though Wang Chong didn't say it explicitly, everyone knew that Wang Chong was about to start building his own faction in the Kunwa training camp. From then on, everyone here would be on the same boat as Wang Chong. Birds of a feather flock together. When a person was born, there would be the saying that they were of the same clan. Everyone shared the same ancestor, and this was the saying that they were of the same clan. And when one was slightly older, there would be schoolmates. If they studied under the same window and were taught by the same teacher, they would be considered classmates. And when one left home, there would be the saying that they were from the same clan. Since everyone was from the same place, they would take care of one another. This was the saying that they were from the same clan. And when they were successful in their career, they would be conferred a title and work in the royal court. This was the saying that they were from the same clan. Everyone had their own group. Only when there was a group would there be protection. This was how most of the science of the prestigious clans came to be. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi had been influenced by their surroundings since young, so they couldn't be more familiar with this. The two of them had wanted to persuade Wang Chong, but fortunately, Wang Chong had decided to act on his own. Are you ready? Wang Chong turned to look at Zhao Jingdian. He didn't bring Jingdian with him when he left the mountain, so he arranged for him to stay here. Zhao Jingdian was his comrade and subordinate in his previous life. Naturally, it was time for him to familiarize himself with such matters. Everything is ready. Lieutenant Li has been here a few times before, and he even sent guards to guard the place. All of the renovations have been completed. Let's wait for NZ to make arrangements. Zhao Jingdian said. Wang Chong nodded. He knew that the Lieutenant Li whom Zhao Jingdian was referring to was his uncle Li Lin. Li Lin was the one who had been making the arrangements for him on this mountain. After greeting the crowd, Wang Chong led the way to the peak of the mountain. Sunlight shone down, and from afar, a resplendent residence could be seen standing on the peak of the mountain. The sun shone down, illuminating all the roof tiles with a golden luster. It was a beautiful sight to behold. After 4 months of construction and renovation, Wang Chong's residence by the lakeside of White Tiger Peak was finally completed. The eaves and arches of the residence exuded a sense of grandeur and luxury. It's finally done. Wang Chong heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at the residence that resembled a fairyland. Food had to be eaten bite by bite, and a journey had to be taken one step at a time. Ever since he entered the Kunwa training camp, he could finally start on his plans. Not far to the east, the Kunwa training camp housed the most talented generals in the entire empire. Every single one of them was a valuable asset to the empire. Every single one of them could be used by him. With his talent as a commander and these talented generals, he would be able to prop up the entire empire. This was where his dreams lay, and it was also the cornerstone for him to change his destiny. As the saying goes, a building 100 feet high is built from the earth. In the future, everyone would remember this place. Gongzi. As they reached the peak of the mountain, a few guards came forward to welcome them. It had been some time since the construction of the residence was completed. However, this was the first time Wang Chong had been here. Wang Chong led the crowd through the purple gate and into the tall walls of the residence. This was a completely different world. Gardens, ponds, corridors, rockeries, pavilions. There were even sculptures made by top-notch craftsmen. All of the eaves, doors, windows, and pillars were carved with exquisite craftsmanship. The materials used to paint the walls were also top-notch, giving off a grand impression. TSK, this pillar isn't simple. I remember seeing it before. It costs 700 gold taels each, and I think it's made of gold-threaded jinnan wood. The flying clouds on the eaves are flying in the air. I remember that they cost 50 taels of silver each. This is really beautiful. This place is much better than our training camp. My gosh, I don't think I can afford even a single pillar here. That other than Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi, the others had just received the news and rushed over. This was their first time here. The interior of Wang Chang's residence was even more beautiful than the exterior. Su Qi, Gao Feng, Nie Yan, and the others were all descendants of officials. Even though they came from well-to-do families, they were still far from being able to afford such items. Even though they knew that Wang Chong was wealthy, this was the first time they were witnessing the extent of his wealth. Regardless of whether it was the wood for the pavilions or the ponds in the garden, they were all made of precious gold-threaded jinnan wood, red sandalwood and white jade. However, the crux of the matter was that it wasn't just a simple stacking. Even though the materials were expensive, the design was elegant and ancient. Placed in the depths of the mountain, it seemed elegant and tranquil. Everyone fell in love with this place at first glance. Wang Chong chuckled, seeing how everyone was attracted by the interior as soon as they entered the walls, touching and admiring everything. He couldn't help but chuckle. He didn't participate in the construction of this place at all. However, he was the one who provided the blueprints for the construction. Other than the ordinary flying eaves and arches of this era, there were also many unique features that Wang Chong had incorporated into the other era. But at the same time, the two of them fused together perfectly. For example, the wisteria chairs were woven with finger-thick wisteria, making them comfortable to the touch and sit on. These items were unique, and they blended in perfectly with the environment here. Chapter 295. As Wang Chong's first base in the Kunwa training camp, Wang Chong was extremely important to him. Thus, the renovations were extremely meticulous, and the results showed that it was indeed effective. Is everything prepared? While everyone was looking around, Wang Chong turned to look at the guard by the side. He vaguely recalled that this person was called Huang Liang, and Uncle Li Lin had mentioned him before. Everything here was under this person's control, and he was an extremely reliable person. Gongzi, everything is prepared. Huang Liang replied with a deep and respectful voice. Lead the way. Wang Chong nodded. At the entrance of the main hall of the residence, several 6 long pieces of paper were laid out, and a paper laminator was standing respectfully by the side. Beside the paper was a bowl-sized ink pot. When Wang Chong walked up to the entrance, he immediately caught everyone's attention. Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Su Qi, Gao Feng, Nie Yan, Chen Burang, and Chen Jiming walked over. Their gazes were gathered on Wang Chong, and there was a faint hint of expectation in their eyes. Bring me a brush, Wang Chong said as he stretched out his hand. Gongzi, a guard immediately passed the brush over to Wang Chong. The atmosphere suddenly turned solemn. All of the construction had been completed, and the interior decorations had been completed as well. According to the rules, as the owner of this residence, he should name it after the construction was completed. But everyone knew that there was more to it than that. Wang Chong gripped the heavy brush, a pensive look on his face. Ever since his reincarnation, this was the first time he had stepped out and presented himself and the Wang clan to the world. This residence and this base would be of great significance to him in the future. Dipping the brush several times larger than an ordinary brush into the bowl-sized ink pot, Wang Chong already knew what he should do. Strategizing the world. Protect the common people through martial arts. 2 sentences of 14 words were eloquent. Wang Chong's righteousness was unflattering. However, Wang Chong's cursive script was a different story. As the saying goes, the brush moves like a serpent. The most important thing about cursive writing was the emotions contained in the writer, while calligraphy was secondary. These 2 lines of words contained Wang Chong's life's revenge. Although it was not the work of a master, it had a majestic aura. As a general, one must know the art of war and not know strategy. The Kunwa training camp was a general training camp, not a training camp for soldiers. As a general, the most important thing was to stop the war and suppress the world. In the future, this place would be called Deflecting Blade Manor. This is the true essence of martial arts. As Wang Chong spoke, his brush moved like a serpent as he wrote the last horizontal line. When these words were written, a majestic aura gushed out from the paper. Stop the war, stop the war. He did not manage to do it in his previous life, and this was his deepest regret. That was why he came back from the dead. Glory, riches, favor, loss. In this life, he no longer cared about these things. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to accomplish this goal. Because this was his mission. In that instant, Wang Chong felt agitated, and a majestic aura gushed out from his body. It wasn't the aura of this 15-year-old boy, but the war god of the Central Plains, the final grand marshal of the Central Plains, who had gone through countless trials and tribulations in his previous life. In that instant, the entire Deflecting Blade Manor fell silent. Looking at the words on the paper and the majestic aura emanating from Wang Chong, everyone in the courtyard was dazed. Even the Imperial Army Guard's face paled. The aura emanating from Wang Chong was simply too powerful. In his previous life, he was the war god of the Central Plains, a figure whom even the foreign cavalrymen feared. How could these ordinary Imperial Army Guards possibly bear such an aura? All of the guards, including Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Zhengping, Qi Weisi, Sun Jiming and Chen Burang, were deeply intimidated, and none of them could say a word. No one knew what had happened to Wang Chong, but that unparalleled might, the majestic aura, and the aura he exuded were deeply imprinted in everyone's mind. Yet, that intimidating aura only lasted for an instant before disappearing without a trace. Wang Chong retracted the aura he exuded from his previous life, and just like a massive iceberg, he sank back to the bottom of the lake after revealing a corner of his true self. This wasn't the time for him to reveal his other self. Wang Chong soon reverted back to his original appearance. "Old mister, I'll have to trouble you to frame it for me," Wang Chong said to the old mister whom he had invited over from the capital. "Yes, Gongzi." The old mister glanced at the two poems on the table, and a hint of admiration flashed across his eyes. Then, he respectfully took the two poems from Wang Chong and began to frame them. Behind him, the crowd also seemed to have awoken from a dream. Deflecting Blade Manor. Deflecting Blade Manor. What a good name. It's very poetic, and it suits the mood of this place. To think that Gongzi's poem would be so good as well. Everyone quickly recovered from their daze. Clearly, they were very fond of this name. It's good that everyone likes it. Stopping war through martial arts is the way to bring peace to the world. The goal of us, the students of Kunwa Training Camp, is to stop war and protect the world. In the future, feel free to visit us whenever you have the time. Wang Chong smiled as he turned to the crowd behind him. "Yes, Gongzi," the crowd replied respectfully. Unknowingly, they had already formed a group that viewed Wang Chong as their leader. Be it in terms of strength, standing, reputation, or background, Wang Chong was the undisputed number one. And Wang Chong had already proven himself through his actions. "Jingdian, this is the first batch of names that I've drafted. Help me distribute them. Soldiers are valued for their quality, not quantity. 7 people should be enough for the first batch." Wang Chong passed over a list of names that he had prepared in advance. There were 100 generals in Kunwa Training Camp, but Wang Chong didn't intend to invite all of them. Rice had to be eaten bite by bite. First, Wang Chong wanted to invite the most influential people to join Deflecting Blade Manor. Once Deflecting Blade Manor's influence in Kunwa Training Camp grew, there would be an endless stream of people trying to join Deflecting Blade Manor. When that time came, Wang Chong could send out invitations to these people, and everything would fall into place. "Gongzi, will the art of war be taught here?" A voice came from the side. Sun Jiming was standing in the crowd, looking fervently at Wang Chong with a fiery gaze. He remembered that Wang Chong had mentioned the art of war. Martial arts was a minor Dao, but the art of war was the major Dao. It was something that only the clans of generals could grasp, and it wasn't taught in Kunwa Training Camp. He had looked into it over the past few months. There was no doubt about it. Wang Chong nodded. He wasn't surprised at Sun Jiming's reaction. This was a natural talent for generals. And in his previous life, he was the one who loved to launch surprise attacks and ambush. Sun Jiming's instincts had awakened. As a general, one must know the art of war. Those who wish to enter Deflecting Blade Manor in the future will have to pass the most basic examination on the art of war. Wang Chong said. The art of war in this world was truly crude. At the very least, that was how Wang Chong saw it. There was another reason why Wang Chong was conducting the examination on the art of war in Deflecting Blade Manor. He hoped to use his proficiency as the war saint of the Central Plains to temper and nurture the future generals of the Central Plains. If these future generals could pass his examination, they would become even stronger than they were in his previous life. And to the Tang dynasty, this would be a blessing in disguise. As the last Grand Marshal of the Central Plains in his previous life, Wang Chong had used tens of thousands of soldiers to hold back an enemy that was 10 times his size, allowing the Central Plains to survive for several decades and wipe out a large number of foreign invaders. In terms of the art of war, there was no one in this era who could surpass him. Even the legendary war god of the Tang dynasty, So Yung-sun, had lost to him, needless to say others. Art of war? Hee hee lad, you sure talk big. Just as Wang Chong said those words, a voice suddenly sounded from outside, and it was swiftly approaching. In the blink of an eye, several figures appeared at the entrance. Instructor Zhao. Instructor Zhou. At the gate of the Deflecting Blade Manor, 2 muscular and valiant figures walked in, one in front and one behind, their heads held high. Even Wang Chong was surprised to see them. To think that they would be Zhao Qianqiu and Zhou Huang. The former was the teacher of Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian in the training camp, while the latter had a life-and-death comrade with them on the night of the Gogrian assault. Instructors, why are you here? Surprised, Wang Chong hurried forward to welcome them. Ha ha ha. I've always wanted to see who would be so daring as to set his sights on the Kunwa training camp and build a private residence so close to it. And now it's indeed you. Zhao Qianqiu laughed heartily. Zhou Huang hurriedly walked forward and greeted the crowd. You're really a cunning fellow. The royal court is currently clearing up the surrounding land. I heard that the Bureau of Works and the Court of Judicial Review have issued a joint decree that all land within 10 li of the training camp is strictly prohibited, and no private residences are to be built. I heard that the royal court has already sold the rights to this mountain to you. I couldn't even take it back even if I wanted to. Zhou Huang reprimanded jokingly. That lad has always been this fast. Don't you know that? In my opinion, the rule from the Bureau of Works and the Court of Judicial Review is aimed at that lad. Those bastards from the Court of Judicial Review didn't even take a look when they were approving the land. They only realized it after making such a huge loophole. Zhao Qianqiu said, Lords, you already know that this is my private residence. Is it really appropriate for you to say such words in front of me? Wang Chong chuckled. As such, as soon as Kunwa training camp opened, Zhang Xian immediately bought the land here. Given the current situation, it was within his expectations that the royal court would ban the sale of land in the vicinity. Hee hee, it's best if I say it in front of you. There's no need to stand on ceremony with that lad. Zhao Qianqiu reprimanded jokingly, casually pulling a purple rattan chair over. Zhao Qianqiu couldn't help but praise it for its comfort. Lad, you said that you're conducting a military strategy examination here. You sure are arrogant. Let me ask you, do you know the art of war? Zhao Qianqiu sat down on the rattan chair and lightly knocked on the table before him as he asked. Lord, are you going to guide me? Wang Chong chuckled as he sat opposite Zhao Qianqiu. Hee hee, it seems like you aren't convinced. It's fine for you kids to spar with one another. As for the art of war, don't lead them astray. This isn't something that can be taught casually. Come. If you can defeat me, you can teach them the art of war here. Zhao Qianqiu said. Even though his words sounded like a joke, Wang Chong could sense a hint of seriousness in Zhao Qianqiu's words. Clearly, Zhao Qianqiu didn't approve of him teaching the art of war here. The art of war was the way of a general. The slightest mistake could result in death. Not only would he be harming himself, his subordinates would also die a graveless death. This was also the reason why the Kunwa training camp didn't teach the art of war. Chapter 296. Since Lord is willing to give me pointers, I'll gladly accept it. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Deflecting Blade Manor had already prepared a game of Go, which Wang Chong had intended to use to test others. But now, he decided to use it against Wang Chong and Zhao Qianqiu. Haha, instructor is going to play chess with Wang Chong. I wonder which of the two is stronger. Even though I would like to say Gongzi, instructor should be stronger. Upon hearing that Wang Chong was going to compete with Zhao Qianqiu in the art of war, the crowd immediately became excited. This was especially so for Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi and the others. Zhao Qianqiu was their direct instructor. On their first day on the mountain, Zhao Jingdian's unique ferocious tiger teachings had made them suffer quite a bit. Gongzi, you can do it. Teach the instructor a lesson. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi mustered their courage and cheered. If it had been any other time, they wouldn't have dared to do so. The two of them knew that instructor Zhao had a powerful background. He was completely different from the other instructors. After placing the chess set on the chessboard, they placed a jar of black and white stones beside them. The surrounding Ren sect disciples immediately gathered around them. Even Zhou Huang was the same. He stared at the duo curiously. As an instructor, you should give in to your students. I can't allow others to say that I'm bullying the weak. Come, you go first. I'll give you a handicap of 3 stones. Zhao Qianqiu stretched out his palm and expressed his generosity right from the start. Since he wanted to teach Wang Chong a lesson and make him give up on the idea, naturally, he had to make the other party admit defeat. It should be enough to let him go first and give him a handicap of 3 stones. All right, Wang Chong smiled calmly and accepted Zhao Qianqiu's goodwill. He placed a stone on the chessboard first. Gongzi, you can do it. Zhao Jingdian broke out in cold sweat for Wang Chong. He hadn't followed Wang Chong for long, so he wasn't too familiar with Wang Chong's chess skills. Zhao Qianqiu, there's no need to get too serious when playing chess with a student. It's fine. Zhou Huang tried to resolve the situation. He had a good impression of Wang Chong. After all, they had been through life and death together. He was also afraid that Wang Chong would lose too badly. However, the development of the matter was completely different from what everyone had imagined. 10 steps later, the smile on Zhao Qianqiu's face vanished. After 20 steps, a deep frown appeared on Zhao Qianqiu's forehead. After 40 steps, Zhao Qianqiu's attention was completely drawn into the chessboard. At the 50th step, Zhao Qianqiu's complexion turned extremely awful. Even those who didn't understand the game of Go could tell that Zhao Qianqiu was in a bad situation, extremely bad at that. As for those who understood Go, their attention had long been drawn to the match between Wang Chong and Zhao Qianqiu. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi were stunned. The duo knew of Zhao Qianqiu's background, and it was for this reason that they were astonished. This round doesn't count. Another round, this round started as normal. Don't give way. At the 80th step, Zhao Qianqiu finally gave up. All right, Wang Chong looked at Zhao Qianqiu, and with a slight smile, he agreed to it readily. This round, Zhao Qianqiu lost even faster. By the 70th move, the game had already collapsed. I'll go first this round. Zhao Qianqiu was still unable to accept his loss to Wang Chong. All right, Wang Chong nodded in agreement. This was already the 3rd round. By the 4th round, no matter how thick-skinned Zhao Qianqiu was, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. I'll give you a handicap of 3 stones this round. Taking a sip of tea, Wang Chong took the initiative to ask Zhao Qianqiu. With a darkened face, Zhao Qianqiu nodded his head heavily, but he didn't say a single word. In this round, Zhao Qianqiu played exceptionally slowly and cautiously, and the further he went, the slower he became. In the end, Zhao Qianqiu wasn't able to leave the deflecting blade manor. After the 4th round, Zhao Qianqiu sat by himself, staring at the board with a grim expression. Compared to when he first arrived, it was a world of difference. Wang Chong, can we play a round? Zhou Huang suddenly asked Wang Chong with an eager gaze. He was a master archer, and on the battlefield, all he had to do was to follow orders and fire arrows at any moment. But who wouldn't want to become a talented general? Zhou Huang could tell that Wang Chong was truly talented in the art of war. Zhou Huang could only explain it as a legacy from a general and minister clan. Of course, Wang Chong chuckled and agreed to it without any hesitation. Soon, another person appeared beside Zhao Qianxiu, and he stared at the board silently as well. Zhao Qianxiu and Zhou Huang weren't able to leave the deflecting blade manor. And this was something they didn't expect. That lad has returned to the barracks. At this moment, Wang Chong, Zhao Jingdian, Zhuang Jingping, Zhao Qianxiu, and Zhou Huang had no idea that in an extremely distant place, a group of people was standing on a mountain peak, silently looking in the direction of deflecting blade manor. The autumn wind blew, and from where they were standing, they could clearly see the deflecting blade manor, which was only the size of a fingernail. Even though they couldn't see it clearly, they could still make out the silhouettes in the distance. I knew that lad must have some ulterior motive for coming to the Kunwa training camp instead of Xinwei and Longwei camps. If I'm not wrong then, Abutong, do you believe that he's going to start recruiting soldiers in the training camp soon? On the northern peak of Azure Dragon Peak, Zheng Xian waved his paper fan and chuckled. I heard that Wang Chong and his Wang clan don't have a good impression of the Hu. Abutong, I think that you and your father will have to wash the horses of that lad in the future. Abutong's face darkened, and he remained silent. On the other hand, the Hu subordinates behind him were infuriated. Zheng Xian, there's no need for you to provoke me. If I'm not mistaken, His Highness King Qi isn't faring too well either. The King of Song and the Wang clan are able to squeeze him dry in the royal court. Abutong said coldly. The calm expression on Zheng Xian's face froze in an instant. Abutong, there's no need for us to criticize one another. The Wang clan is simply too powerful at the moment, and all of this is due to that lad. If we don't do something about it, neither of us will have a good time. Zheng Xian waved his paper, and he soon regained his composure. What do you intend to do? Abutong asked grimly. Hee, it seems like we've reached an agreement. Zheng Xian's smile eased up. Then, it'll be easier for us to discuss the rest. The Kunwa training camp is still considered the capital, so we can't do anything to that lad. However, there's no need for us to do so either. That lad from the Wang clan wouldn't do anything meaningless. As long as we know what he's up to, we can just do the opposite. Thinking of Deng Mingxin, Zheng Xian's heart ached. Initially, he didn't intend to stand up for Wang Chong. As for King Qi, he could just feign civility and deal with him. But while he was at home, trouble would descend from the heavens. Deng Mingxin's matter had put him in a very passive position, and even the gazes of those around him had changed. Since it was Wang Chong who provoked him, he couldn't be blamed for his actions. That lad is no simple character. He built a residence there, and it's located right next to the training camp. There's a high chance that he's trying to win over the hearts of the people here. Since we know what he's after, the rest is simple. All we have to do is to stop him. Zheng Xian sneered coldly. But the royal court has already banned the purchase of land. That lad's residence is probably unique in this region. It's impossible for us to obtain it. Abutong said grimly. Clearly, he had already tried it before. Hee, that's because you didn't find the right person. It's not that I'm biased against you who or look down on you. However, it's better for us Han to deal with this matter ourselves. I've already told King Qi that I've requested a plot of land from the Court of Judicial Review. It should be completed in another 7 to 8 days. Zheng Xian said. Abutong was taken aback. It was as if he was meeting Zheng Xian for the first time. Hee, what are you looking at? That lad's residence has been under construction for several months now. I'm not blind. Did you think that I would only take action now? Zheng Xian said. If it's really as you say, then I've truly underestimated you. Abutong gazed deeply at Zheng Xian. This fellow gave him a feeling that he would be an extremely difficult opponent to deal with. But why don't I see your residence? Abutong asked doubtfully. He scanned the surroundings, but there was no sign of human activity in the surrounding mountains. Of course you can't see it. That's because I've specially requested for it. I have to leave the trees on the periphery intact. I'll only chop them down after the construction is complete. Zheng Xian said with an unfathomable expression. Those who are skilled in battle are not worthy of fame. If you want to deal with someone, you can't let them be prepared. Abutang, you fellows are too high profile. This is also the reason why you attract so much hatred. King Qi still holds you in high regard. Abutang harumphed coldly. Of course, he didn't believe Zheng Xian's words. Speak. What do you want me to do? Abutang went straight to the point. Hey, it's simple. I'll rope in the students of the Kunwa training camp to recruit talents for King Qi. On the other hand, you'll warn those students that whoever dares to follow Wang Chong, whoever dares to step into Wang Chong's residence will be an enemy of King Qi and the Hu. What you have to do is to teach those fellows a lesson. Even if we can't make a move on Wang Chong, can't we teach those juniors a lesson? As long as we beat them into submission naturally, no one will join the Wang clan's side. With King Qi backing us, I would like to see who dares to go against us. Abutang, I'll leave this matter to you, right? Zheng Xian asked. Humph. Abutang glared at him hatefully. Naturally, he knew what Zheng Xian was up to. However, Abutang didn't object to the idea. As you wish. After saying those words, Abutang turned around and left with his Hu subordinates. Looking at Abutang's departing back, a smile slowly crept onto Zheng Xian's lips. Who was more suitable than a Hu to be his subordinate? More importantly, who was more suitable than the son of Great General Abusi? There was still plenty of room for the Hu Great General to work with the Wang clan. Chapter 297. Translator. Mr. Voltaire Editor. Modlaws 123. The land was vast and boundless, with mountains rising and falling like the waves of the sea. This was a vast plateau. The sky was high and the clouds were deep. The terrain was far higher than any of the surrounding lands, any of the countries. From here, one could see the world. In the Tang dynasty, this place was known as the Uzan. Wuxia, you see it. Over here, over those mountains, the Tang dynasty is in the distance. The wind howled. At this moment, at the highest point of the mountains, at the edge of the plateau, a middle-aged man dressed in black stood against the wind. His aura was majestic like a mountain range. Using the goose feather fan in his hand, he pointed to the end of the horizon, exuding the aura of a ruler. The man had a scholarly demeanor, and his eyes were filled with wisdom. He looked like a person from the Central Plains. However, the slightly rough yellow skin under his sleeves revealed his identity. The people here couldn't be any more authentic than the people of the Uzan. My lord, you see it. Beside the middle-aged man was a valiant general. His feet were apart, and a long saber hung from his waist. He stood there like a spear stabbed into the ground, giving off the feeling of an immovable mountain. His body wasn't very tall, but the aura he exuded was as vast and boundless as the ocean. And that sharp aura he exuded seemed to be able to split apart a mountain in front of him with a single slash. But so what if you see it? That land isn't suitable for grazing horses or sheep. Your subordinate doesn't understand. Why is my lord always thinking about that place? Huashu Wuzong said indifferently. There wasn't the slightest change in his eyes. He knew what his superior wanted to say. But as a general, he had no interest in such things. Ha ha ha, Huashu, you're wrong. Hearing the words of his subordinate, Dalwin Ruozan retracted his goose feather fan and chuckled. Although the Tang dynasty isn't suitable for grazing horses or sheep, it produces the most beautiful silk in the world. It has the most grain and the most cities in the world. The people of the highlands should rule over the people of the lowlands. Huashu, don't you think so? My lord, please think about it. Your subordinate is a crude man who only knows how to fight. Huashu Wuzong said lightly. His expression was firm as he stood there motionlessly. Even his eyelashes did not tremble. Moreover, the Tang people may not be as easy to deal with as you think. Huashu Wuzong said indifferently. As General Uzan, Huashu Wuzong never looked down on others, but he would never underestimate his opponents either. If Uzan wanted to expand, the Tang dynasty was the best direction. However, even to this day, the Uzan Empire had never succeeded. Not because he was benevolent, but because he was too stubborn. The Uzan Empire was divided by the royal family. Qi Dezuzan, who resided in the capital city of Luosa, had a supreme position. Under Qi Dezuzan's jurisdiction, there were 4 royal lineages, which were ruled by Qi Dezuzan's 4 younger brothers. They were the Elisa royal lineage, the Lesa royal lineage, the Yays royal lineage, and the Yarlung royal lineage. Guoshu Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen belonged to the Elisa royal lineage that ruled over the southeast. Here, they were bordered by the Tang dynasty's Jiannan, and they weren't too far away from Arai's Mengshi Zhao. In these 2 years, the Tang dynasty's southern protector general Zhangqiu Jinxiong and Mengshi Zhao's king Zhelifeng were their main enemies. The 180,000 elites of the Tang dynasty's southern protectorate manor were like a nail hammered into their hearts, exerting immense pressure on them. Ha ha ha, Huishu, have you heard? Your nemesis Zhangqiu Jinxiong is going to be transferred to the capital. He intends to become the Minister of War of the Tang dynasty. That's not an insignificant position. Daluan Ruozhen suddenly chuckled. Is the news reliable? Guoshu Wuzong was taken aback for a moment before a hint of interest appeared on his face. It hasn't been confirmed yet. However, according to our informants, there's at least an 80% chance of it happening. Daluan Ruozhen replied confidently. Hee, without Zhangqiu Jinxiong around, the Tang dynasty's Jiannan is a void. Guoshu Wuzong, this is a great opportunity for us. As he spoke, he turned to look at Great General Uzhen beside him with an indiscernible smile. Guoshu Wuzong's lips twitched slightly, but he soon regained his composure. It's useless. Zhangqiu Jinxiong's military might is a mix of truth and falsehood, and the news that you received might not be true. Perhaps he was the one who intentionally leaked the news. Besides, even if he were to leave, he would surely have made preparations beforehand. He and I have been rivals for a long time. He won't be an easy opponent to deal with. Zhangqiu Jinxiong isn't an easy opponent. However, the same can't be said for his successor, Xinyu Zhongtong. If Zhangqiu Jinxiong is transferred to the Tang dynasty's capital, Guoshu, you'll have to prepare yourself. We'll be waging war against the Tang dynasty soon. Daluan Ruozhen complimented with deep meaning in his eyes. I'm not afraid of war, but Lord, there's no turning back. Are we really prepared for it? Guoshu Wuzong gripped the hilt of his saber tightly as he replied. The Tang people were no pushovers. This had been proven countless times in the past. In the past 1,000 years, the Tang dynasty was the only territory that Uzhen had yet to conquer. Similarly, the Uzhen Empire was also a territory that the Tang dynasty had yet to conquer. Every single war once started was difficult to end. As one of Uzhen's generals, Guoshu Wuzong knew this all too well. As a warrior, Guoshu Wuzong lived for war. War was his calling. But as one of Uzhen's generals, Guoshu Wuzong had to consider the empire behind him. It's different this time. Daluan Ruozhen chuckled as he fanned himself. There was an indescribable glint in his eyes. This time, it's the will of the gods. The Magus priests have asked 3 times, and all 3 times, the same prophecy was given. The crisis comes from the east. This is a crisis that concerns the survival of our Uzhen Empire. If we can't nip this crisis in the bud, then our Uzhen Empire will be beyond redemption. Guoshu, you should know when was the last time the same prophecy was given 3 times, right? Daluan Ruozhen nodded with a serious expression. On this lonely plateau, there wasn't just one civilization or one dynasty. Thousands of years ago, there was another powerful dynasty on this plateau. However, this powerful dynasty suddenly perished overnight, and all traces of it were erased. Now people only knew its name, Zhangzheng Dynasty. That was the Duzong Dynasty, which was even older than the 7 Crimson Sky Kings. Almost no one knew about this ancient Uzhen Empire. Only the higher-ups of Uzhen Empire knew about it. That was the last time the same prophecy was given 3 times. All these years, the prophecy had successfully prophesied the rise of Mount Goddess, the appearance of the Great Snow Mountain Temple, and the era of the 7 Crimson Sky Kings. In the Uzhen Empire, the prophecy was a higher existence than the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Even the holy monks of the Great Snow Mountain Temple didn't dare to disobey it. But I want to tell you that although the Magus priests say there are 3 prophecies, there are actually 4. The last one was hidden by Zhangpu, Daluan Ruozhen said. Guoshu Wuzong's expression suddenly changed. What does 4 identical prophecies mean? I don't think I need to explain it to you anymore. In the history of our Uzhen Empire, this has never happened before. There is only one Tang dynasty in the east of our Uzun Empire. Without a doubt, the crisis comes from the Tang dynasty. Only the Tang dynasty has the strength to topple our Uzun Empire. Right now, Dusong Mangpoch has already brought the first prince to the capital of the Tang dynasty to investigate the situation. I heard that the monarch of the Tang dynasty has suddenly become muddle-headed. I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe that Dusong Mangpoch and the others will soon return with news. Daloan Ruozan said, his gaze turning to the northeast, piercing through the void to look in the direction of the capital of the Tang dynasty. Standing behind him, Huashu Wazong also looked in the same direction. The mountain was quiet, with only the sound of the wind blowing in the distance. It was the sound of countless Uzun warriors training, rumble. Dust flew in the air. In the northwest of the capital of the Tang dynasty, 10 some elite horsemen galloped along the wide road. It was only 10 some horsemen, but they exuded the aura of an army of thousands. Even the earth seemed to tremble beneath their feet. Ha ha ha, this is the Tang dynasty. It's filled with farmers, cloth sellers, and silk sellers. How can such people compare to our Uzun? What right do they have to compete with our Uzun? In front of this group of elite soldiers, an Uzun youth with sword-like eyebrows sat on the back of a horse and heartily laughed in Tibetan. First Prince, this is a good thing. A brawny Uzun man exuding a majestic aura like a storm chased up from the rear. His face was yellow, as if he had been exposed to the sun. Although he wasn't very tall, his aura was as unshakable as a mountain. And what was most striking was his palm. It was especially wide and seemed especially powerful. This person was one of the great generals of the Uzun, Dusong Mangpoch. Dusong was the name of the clan. Mangpoch meant eagle. Only the most outstanding disciples of the plateau would be bestowed the name of Mangpoch by the clan. Every great clan of the Uzun would have one, and only one Mangpoch. The current Tang dynasty is no longer the Tang dynasty of the past. Right now they like profit, business, and comfort. This is a good thing. A mountain cannot hold two tigers. On this continent, there shouldn't be two equally powerful empires. The weakening of the Tang dynasty is a good thing for us. Dusong Mangpoch said. He wore a leather hat on his head, and wore ordinary clothes to hide his identity. Although this wasn't a particularly brilliant method, the Tang dynasty lacked understanding of the Uzun. Even if they knew of Dusong Mangpoch's name, they might not have seen him in person. But First Prince, don't forget the mission we shoulder. Thus, on this trip to the Tang dynasty, we should do our best to keep a low profile. As Dusong Mangpoch spoke, he stroked his beard. Chapter 298. This wasn't his first visit to the Tang dynasty. The last time he was here was more than a decade ago. Back then, the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains was filled with soldiers being mobilized everywhere. It was like an intricate war machine. Everyone who arrived here could sense the intricate workings of this machine. But now, the long period of peace and victory was slowly turning the people here arrogant. Even though the Tang dynasty was powerful, Dusong Mangpoch could already see signs of its decline. This was in stark contrast to Yusang, which was currently growing stronger with each passing day. Without a doubt, this was good news for the Uzun dynasty. What are you afraid of? The eldest prince's voice was loud, and it suddenly rose to a higher pitch. Dusong Mangpoch, surely you haven't lost the courage of the Dusong clan. The reason why the Uzun dynasty was able to stand against the Tang dynasty is because of our brave warriors, the sabers and arrows in our hands, not because we want to keep a low profile. Furthermore, we are here to probe the strength of the Tang dynasty. If we don't keep a high profile, how can we find out their true strength? Besides, haha, we are envoys. Doesn't the Tang dynasty always flaunt their benevolence? Do they dare to do anything to us envoys? Dusong Mangpoch was taken aback, and he fell silent. Even though he was a little uneasy about the First Prince's high profile, he had to admit that the First Prince's words weren't without reason. Anyone who came to the Uzun Empire, even an envoy, had to tread carefully and keep a low profile. The envoys of the Uzun dynasty went to the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, Abbasid Caliphate, and Karak-Spazinu. Only the Tang dynasty was different. In the Tang dynasty, envoys wielded unparalleled authority. In fact, The Tang dynasty even had an organization that specialized in punishing those who offended the envoys, the Chamberlain of Dependencies. They had received the invitation of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Forget it. In any case, we will only be staying in the Tang dynasty for 2 to 3 months. Let's just do as the first prince says. Dusong Mangpoch said. That's more like it. This time, I want to see just what kind of people there are in the Tang dynasty. The first prince laughed heartily as he galloped away. Everyone hurriedly followed. Kumwa Training Camp, White Tiger Peak. Buzz! Origin energy surged in from the surroundings. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Wang Chong's body was shrouded in a white mist of origin energy, making his figure indistinct. It was not the main hall of the Kumwa Training Camp, nor was it the spirit gathering formation. However, the origin energy around Wang Chong was so dense that it was even more dense than the spirit gathering array. This was the effect of the golden organs. Wang Chong's affinity with primordial qi was far greater than anyone else in the Kunwa training camp. This gave him the ability to turn passivity into initiative. It could plunder the yuan qi in the surrounding space. Wang Chong's absorption was flawless. The space within a radius of several dozen feet could be absorbed cleanly in an instant. But essence qi was surging. A place with an abundance of essence qi would always flow towards a place with a lack of essence qi. In other words, the space around Wang Chong was like a black hole that could constantly absorb the essence qi in the surrounding space. This allowed him to be unaffected by the concentration of essence qi in the surrounding space and actively absorb essence qi. Even in a place with a lack of essence qi, Wang Chong could still absorb energy that far exceeded normal standards. This was the effect of the golden organs. In this period of time, Wang Chong was starting to realize the benefits of the gold organs. Buzz! In the dense white mist, a white rippling halo constantly expanded and shrunk around Wang Chong's body, expanding and shrunk circle after circle of scouring. With each scouring it became stronger. At the same time, it was accompanied by a metallic roar, appearing extremely spectacular. In the essence qi realm, the white rippling halo was the most powerful technique. This was the most basic halo power. When one's cultivation reached the pinnacle, every single move of theirs would be able to produce such destructive ripples, making it much more powerful than ordinary techniques. During this period of time, Wang Chong had been using the true martial Little Dipper to constantly condense stellar energy, to replenish the white ripples, and strengthen the power of the initial halo. Wang Chong's Might of the Barbaric God had also been cultivated to the peak by Wang Chong, reaching 9 Dan. Basically, he was able to exert 3 to 4 times the strength of an Origin Energy Tier 9 cultivator, making him infinitely close to a true martial 1 Dan cultivator. Wang. After an unknown period of time, when the aura in Wang Chong's body finally reached its peak, a brilliant light flashed in the air. Buzz! There was a bright flash of light in the air, and then Wang Chong vanished from where he stood. Pung 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 pung. 8 consecutive explosions rang out from the 4 corners of the hall. On the walls of the hall, in the east, south, west, north, southeast, northeast, southwest, northwest, a total of 8 directions, there were 8 clear and deep fist imprints. At the same time when the 8 fist imprints appeared, there was a flash of light, and Wang Chong's figure appeared at the center of the hall once more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are a total of 8 fist imprints. To be able to produce 8 fist imprints at once, I can finally cultivate the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon. Dressed in a green robe, Wang Chong looked at the clear imprints on the walls with a hint of gratification in his eyes. In this period of time, he had been using the gold organs and the true martial Little Dipper to raise his strength, and it wasn't without purpose that he cultivated his stellar energy. With the specter steps at its peak, coupled with his powerful origin energy, Wang Chong would be able to cultivate a powerful ultimate technique, the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon. This was a consumption-type secret art that could only be used once. In a short period of time, it could exhaust all of one's origin energy to unleash an exponential increase in combat power and defeat one's opponent in one go. This was a powerful ultimate technique used to defeat powerful enemies. If even the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon could not defeat an enemy, then it was basically impossible. Da-da-da. Just as he was adjusting his breathing, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps approaching him anxiously. Wang Chang's eyebrows twitched. He turned around and saw a familiar figure hurrying down the mountain through the slightly open door. Gongzi, bad news. Something's wrong. Su Qi immediately shouted before he even came up. He looked extremely anxious, causing Wang Chang's expression to change. He had known Su Qi for a long time, but this was the first time he had seen him so anxious. What's going on? With a thought, Wang Chong opened the door almost instantly and appeared at the entrance. Su Qi, weren't you cultivating there? Why did you come here? Wang Chong stood at the door and asked. Gongzi, bad news. Chen Burang was severely injured. Gao Feng and Nie Yen brought some people over to help, but they were also surrounded. Even Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the others have been surrounded. Su Qi was so anxious that he revealed the matter in one breath. What? Wang Chang's expression changed. How did this happen? Why did you guys get into a conflict with others? This was the first time something like this had happened in the Kunwa training camp. We didn't get into a conflict with them. They were the ones who came for us. Chen Burang was cultivating there when someone suddenly appeared and chased them away. Chen Burang was furious. He said a few words to them, and then a fight broke out. Gao Feng and Nie Yen were there. In the end, they went over to help, but the other party was prepared. A large group of people came and severely injured them. I feel that someone came for us this time. Before Su Qi could finish, Wang Chong interrupted him. Take me there. On the main peak of Kunwa training camp, a large group of people was gathered together, and the surroundings were bustling with noise and excitement. Wang Chong rushed over with Su Qi, and with a single glance he saw 2 groups of people. One of the groups was clearly larger in number, and they had a mocking expression on their faces as they surrounded the other group. The who? When Wang Chong arrived at the inner circle, he was immediately taken aback. The group with the most people had hooked noses and deep eyes. They were clearly a group of young Hu. Su Qi had only told him that Chen Burang had been injured. He didn't say that they had gotten into a conflict with a group of Hu. Right, Gongzi? I forgot that the ones who injured Chen Burang were a group of Hu. Su Qi seemed to recall something, and added from behind. Are they here for me? A hint of doubt flashed across Wang Chong's mind as he subconsciously thought of himself. Su Qi had said that these people seemed to have come prepared. Chen Burang came from a humble background, so there was no one who would target him. At most, it would be him. Due to the regional commander's incident, he had become the enemy of all Hu. Just based on this incident, the Hu in the training camp did have a reason to target him. However, when Wang Chong saw Chen Burang in the crowd, his expression immediately warped. Fury blazed in his heart. Chen Burang was lying on the ground, his face swollen from the pummeling, his teeth clenched tightly. His clothes and the ground were covered in his blood. Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others had surrounded him, glaring at the Hu. However, each and every one of them was injured. Bastard! Upon seeing this sight, Wang Chong was immediately enraged. Chen Burang came from a family of hunters, and he was a typical archer. All of his cultivation was focused on his bow and arrow. On the other hand, he was proficient in close combat. Su Qi was right. These people were obviously picking the soft persimmons, and had come prepared. With a darkened face, Wang Chong strode forward. HM? Who told you to come here? Upon seeing Wang Chong and Su Qi, a young Hu immediately stepped in front of them, his eyes narrowing as he blocked their path. Scram! Wang Chong's gaze turned cold, and a chilling killing intent burst forth from his eyes. His roar was like a clap of thunder, and the rowdy crowd immediately fell silent. In an instant, countless gazes turned to look at Wang Chong and Su Qi. Upon meeting Wang Chong's cold gaze, everyone felt a chill run down their spine. I was wondering who it was. So it's the main character. Asro, don't you recognize Wang Chong, Gongzi? Get out of his way. Chapter 299. This young Hu gave Wang Chong a very different feeling. The other Hu looked at him with enmity, but this person was looking at him with hatred. This wasn't just a matter of their standpoints. There must have been some sort of conflict between them. However, Wang Chong didn't remember knowing this person. In his previous life, Wang Chong didn't have much interaction with the Hu in the capital. However, it wasn't as if Wang Chong didn't have any clues. The Kunwa training camp isn't a place that just anyone can enter. And there are only a handful of Hu in the capital who would dare to make things difficult for me despite knowing my identity. Wang Chong's mind whirred, and he could already guess the identity of this Hu. Paying no heed to the young Hu, Wang Chong walked over to Chen Burang's side, squatted down, and placed 2 fingers on Chen Burang's neck. Chen Burang is severely injured and has fainted. We tried to move him out, but we were stopped, so we didn't dare to do anything. Gao Feng and Ye Yen had ashamed looks on their faces. We came over after receiving the news. However, the other party seemed to have intentionally waited for us to arrive so as to blow the matter up. By the time we arrived, the other party had outnumbered us. Everyone was at a disadvantage, Chi Weici said. His face was swollen, a clear sign that he had been beaten as well. Gongzi, be careful. I recognize this person. His name is Abutong, the second son of the Hu Great General Abusi. Beside him are the elite soldiers of the Tongluo. From birth, the Tongluo would choose a foal to accompany them. And from young, they treated each other like a family. They treated their horses like humans, so they were able to empathize with them. As such, the Tongluo were said to be uncontrollable by anyone other than the Tongluo. And the Tongluo cavalry were said to be the elites of the world. These people aren't easy to deal with. Zhuang Jinping lowered his voice and said with a serious look on his face. The Qi clan was known for their steel axe guards, while the Zhuang clan was known for their cavalry. They knew all of the elite cavalry in the world like the back of their hands. But even the elite cavalry that the Zhuang clan was so proud of couldn't compare to the elite cavalry of the Tongluo. The Tongluo cavalry had a very strict set of rules for sitting, lying down, and walking. Even the Zhuang clan couldn't compare to the Tongluo in the way they treated their war horses. The simplest reason was that every Roman horse had grown up with them since they were young, so they could relate to each other. Their bodies were covered in armor, from head to tail to toe. They were all protected by scales. Just these armors alone were worth more than tens of thousands. Even the banker would not spend so much. Before the Tongluo people were attached to the Tang dynasty, they were mercenaries. And the money earned was used to make armor for these war horses. At the same time, the Tongluo were used to fighting. The first mouthful of food a newborn Tongluo would eat was raw food that contained blood. When they were around 7 or 8 years old, they had to hunt wild wolves alone. Almost the entire race took pride in fighting and dying in battle. Moreover, the Tongluo people also had a set of combat techniques and cultivation methods that belonged solely to the Tongluo people. These techniques had been honed through hundreds and thousands of years of battle, and only the Tongluo people could pass them on. Thus, the Tongluo were extremely powerful fighters. But even so, the Tongluo were few in number. Because of the long years of war, they constantly appeared on the front lines of all the conflicts and battles, resulting in a very high number of Tongluo deaths. The entire Tongluo army only had 30,000 elites at most. But just these 30,000 were enough to awe the world. Abusi had established himself as the Hu Great General and an important Hu official of the court, and the Tongluo had established their reputation. Even the banker clan had to fear and respect these Tongluo cavalry. These people were true warriors. It really was them. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind at Zhuang Jinping's words. He and Abusi had not interacted. The Tongluo were independent and did not interact with other people. And it wasn't just him. The other people in the capital probably didn't interact much with them either. The Tongluo were extremely powerful fighters, and many people in the capital respected them. But Wang Chong didn't have a good impression of them. The Tongluo had been attached to the Tang dynasty during Emperor Taizong's reign. These Tongluo cavalrymen had definitely not been influenced by the Great Tang. Rather, they had been forced here by Emperor Taizong's mighty army. Not even the Eastern and Western Turks had been a match for Emperor Taizong's army of iron and blood, much less a measly 30,000 Tongluo. They had judged the situation and ultimately chosen to assimilate to the Tang dynasty. In the last few years, The Tongluo had contributed greatly to the army's campaigns. But this was only a strategy for survival. Wang Chong was well aware that the Tongluo would sooner or later betray the Tang dynasty. Although the Tongluo were not Han, and it wasn't strange for them to betray the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong truly found it intolerable for them to kill and pillage the border citizens of the Tang dynasty so quickly after their betrayal. No matter how powerful an enemy was, they were still an enemy. Wang Chong had no good impression of the Tongluo. Zhuang Jinping, you seem to understand us quite well. Abusi sneered. Now that the main character had appeared, his goal had succeeded. Young Master Wang, I've long heard of your name. We have finally met for the first time. Speak, your men injured my men. What should we do about it? Bastard! What nonsense are you spouting? Gongzi, don't listen to him. These fellows are spouting nonsense. That the agitated Tongluo cursed furiously. Calm down. Wang Chong raised a hand to stop the crowd. His expression was calm and composed, and he exuded a convincing aura. At this point, Wang Chong was slowly beginning to display the charisma of a leader. He stuffed a pill into Chen Burang's mouth, and the pill melted immediately. Seeing Chen Burang's complexion gradually redden, and his breathing stabilize, Wang Chong finally stood up. Turning around, Wang Chong stared coldly at Abutong and the Tongluo youths before him. Even though Abutong had intended to deal with Wang Chong, he couldn't help but be taken aback by the other party's gaze. Abutong, you injured my men. Speak, what should we do about it? Wang Chong didn't bother to explain or pay any heed to Abutong's words. Instead, he looked at Abutong with an intimidating aura. Abutong was taken aback for a moment before he sneered coldly. Didn't you hear what I said? It was your men who injured my men. It was your men who took over our spirit-gathering formation. Wang Gongzi, you should be the one to compensate us, right? Abutong slowly stepped forward, and with a stomp of his feet, a dark green light burst forth from his body. A huge commotion broke out, and even Zhuang Jinping and Qi Weixi's faces warped in shock. True Martial Realm Halo. Abutong had already reached True Martial Realm. Only then did the duo realize that Abutong had concealed his cultivation when fighting with them. Bastard! The duo cursed in their hearts. At the same time, they were more and more certain that Abutong was intentionally using them to lure Wang Chong over. Wang Gongzi, I heard that you looked down on us so you intentionally sent your men to humiliate us? To steal our spirit-gathering formation? If you don't give us an explanation for this matter, you won't be able to leave so easily. Looking at the young man before him, Abutong felt an exhilaration that he had never felt before. His father had many reservations in the royal court, so even though he had been humiliated during the regional commander's incident, he couldn't bring himself to do anything about it. But now, he could finally teach the culprit a lesson in broad daylight. Abutong, I also think that you won't be able to leave so easily if you don't give me an explanation. Wang Chong slowly took 2 steps forward as he glared at Abutong with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Chen Burang was injured because of him. In truth, Wang Chong had a good impression of this young hunter. In Wang Chong's future plans, Chen Burang was an important part of it. He would become the most outstanding master archer of the Tang dynasty in the future. A person who spent his entire life on a single bow and arrow was destined to be mediocre in terms of combat prowess. These Tongluo people had an unfair advantage over him. The reason why Chen Burang had suffered this time was because of him. If he didn't resolve this problem, there would only be more such problems in the future. There was more than one who in the capital Abutong. Wang Chong knew what Abutong was up to, but if the other party thought that he would be able to defeat him, just because he had reached True Martial Realm, then he was gravely mistaken. Looks like we can't come to an agreement then. Abutong sneered coldly. Wang Chong's unconventional behavior was exactly what he wanted. If Wang Chong had gone along with his intentions and offered to compensate him with some gold or pills, he might have suffered a huge headache instead. But since Wang Chong didn't know what was good for him, that was for the best. It's even better that we can't come to an agreement. The rule of us Tongluo people has always been to fight with our fists. There's no one who can win a war through words. Abutong flicked his finger as he took 2 steps forward, and a domineering aura emanated from his body. Wang Chong, I don't care what you say. As long as you can defeat me, I'll forget about today's matter, and I'll treat it as if nothing happened. Otherwise, let me beat you up to appease my anger, and I'll treat it as if nothing happened. Roar. The Tongluo people behind him burst into laughter. This was their true motive. Regardless of what they said, they were determined to teach Wang Chong a lesson today. Bastard. Behind Wang Chong, the crowd was agitated, and rage could be seen on their faces. Wang Chong raised his hand to stop the crowd. Very fair. Wang Chong replied calmly, but his eyes were blazing with fury. Since we can't resolve the matter through negotiation, we should resolve it through war. That's how this matter should be resolved. Shua. In an instant, all of the Tongluo people turned to look at Wang Chong with bizarre gazes. Even Abutong had a bizarre look in his eyes. Unlike other Han, this Han youngster's ideals were identical to those of the Tongluo people. Chapter 300. Good, well said. Abutong suddenly clapped his hands and chuckled. However, there's no need to go through so much trouble. Wang. With a flash of light, a cold gust of wind blew across the air, and Abutong disappeared from the spot at an inconceivable speed. Hong Long. Space trembled, and at the same time, Abutong appeared at Wang Chong's position, his hands still in a grabbing posture. At the same time, a shocked exclamation sounded from behind Abutong. The Tongluo youths hurriedly retreated, as if they had been caught off guard. Abutong's face warped in shock. Turning around, he saw Wang Chong standing at his position with a nonchalant expression, as if expecting him to make a move. Abutong's face turned cold, and he slowly stood up. Wang Chong, I have underestimated you. I admit that you are indeed qualified to face me. Hu Jialua and the rest of you back off. Abutong spread his arms, and the group of Tongluo youths immediately retreated respectfully. Zhuang Jingping and Qi Weisi, the two of you should back off as well. Wang Chong waved his hands. Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the others were indignant, but they still obediently led Chen Burang away. Gongzi, be careful. Abutong was no weakling. In that instant, his speed had reached an incredible level. If it had been anyone else other than Wang Chong, they probably wouldn't have been able to withstand a single blow from him. As the two sides retreated, the others in the surroundings also retreated as well. In the blink of an eye, a vast empty space appeared around the main peak. At the center of this empty space, Wang Chong and Abutong stood facing each other, and the atmosphere suddenly turned extremely tense. This is troublesome. Zhuang Jingping frowned. This was a thorny problem. Even among the Tongluo, Abutong possesses incredible talent. Furthermore, the Tongluo are skilled in combat, and even those of the same cultivation realm as him might not be a match for him. Not to mention, Gongzi is a realm lower than him. Wang Chong had not yet reached the true martial realm. This was something everyone was very clear about. Even though there was only a difference of one realm, the true martial realm and essence energy realm could not be mentioned in the same breath. Putting everything aside, just the halo itself was enough to make Abutong's stellar energy far more formidable than Wang Chong's. I understand, but there's nothing we can do right now. The reason why Abutong had injured Chen Burang was to lure Gongzi over. Right now the young master had to agree whether he wanted to or not. If they attack together, we have even less of a chance of winning. Qi Weisi said from the side, an anxious look on her face. The current situation was like riding a tiger. It was hard to get off. It was not up to them whether they agreed or not. Therefore, even though everyone knew that Wang Chong shouldn't agree, there was nothing they could do. On the other side, the mood among the Tongluo people was completely different. The Tongluo people's eyes were filled with ridicule, and even a little cruelty. Young general, don't stand on ceremony with him. Teach him a lesson. Let him learn a lesson and remember to respect the great general and major general in the future. That the Tongluo people jeered. Even though Wang Chong's ability to dodge the young general's attack had left a deep impression on them, no one thought that he would be a match for the young general. After all, the young general's strength wasn't limited to that punch. That punch was just a probe, and it didn't even bring out a tenth of the young general's strength. Humph. Hearing the words of his companions, Abutang harumphed coldly, and an extremely cold glint flashed across his eyes. Wang Chong, fists and legs don't have eyes. I might not be able to hold myself back later on. Heh, that's what I wanted to say as well. Wang Chong sneered coldly as he stretched his arms and legs. How could Zhang Xian not know of Abutang's intentions? But this was precisely his intention as well. Humph. You're courting death. Even though Abutang didn't say a word, rage flashed across his eyes. He was determined to teach Wang Chong a lesson. You asked for it. Even though he had never intended to let Wang Chong off from the very start, Wang Chong's actions had made him even more determined. Zhang Xian had already made use of King Qi's connections to suppress the other instructors. Even though he could only stall them for a moment, it was more than enough to teach Wang Chong a lesson. Boom! Abutang stomped heavily on the ground, and the ground shook violently. It was as if a massive invisible hand was smashing against the ground. In an instant, a furious gale blew, and Abutang's robe fluttered violently. A greenish-black halo abruptly burst forth from beneath Abutang's feet. Unlike ordinary martial halos, after Abutang's halo appeared, a crimson glow appeared in the air. The crimson glow morphed into thousands of tiny crimson blades. Those thousands of tiny crimson blades sliced the surrounding space into thousands of pieces. SSSS. Looking at the unique halo and the floating crimson blades, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Even though they hadn't crossed blows with Abutang yet, just by looking at him, they could already sense the danger he was in. If one were to be struck by those crimson blades, even if they didn't die, they would be severely injured. Furthermore, it would be an extremely tragic one. Not only so, after summoning his martial halo, Abutang's aura abruptly changed. A domineering, cold, and cruel aura emanated from him, reminiscent of a warrior on the battlefield. It left one shuddering in fear. Even Wang Chong's eyelids couldn't help but twitch upon seeing this. This fellow is indeed powerful. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. How many offspring of the capital had been on the battlefield and witnessed the true bloodshed of the battlefield? Most of them were only at the level of a friendly sparring match. But Abutang was different. The Tongluo tribe prided themselves on fighting, and most of them had been on the battlefield before. They had witnessed the cruelty of the battlefield, and they had participated in it personally. Just based on this point alone, Abutang had already surpassed most of the opponents that Wang Chong had met before. This fellow was definitely not an easy opponent to deal with. However, with a light chuckle, Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. Abutang was indeed a formidable opponent. The battle techniques that he had honed through the bloodshed of the Tongluo tribe were indeed formidable to most. But compared to Wang Chong, Abutang was still far from matching up to him. The bloodshed that Wang Chong had experienced was something that Abutang would never be able to imagine in his entire life. The things that Abutang and the Tongluo tribe were proud of were insignificant before Wang Chong. Wang Chong, receive my blow. Crimson blades floated around Abutang. His voice was loud and resounding, and it felt as if it had descended from the highest point of the world. Not only so, even the air around him was filled with the neighing of war steeds, and it seemed as if countless golden spears were clashing. The bloodthirsty aura that he exuded was truly frightening. It felt as if an Azura had walked out of the depths of hell. Hung long long, the silhouette behind Abutang warped, and before the gazes of countless people, a cold and eerie silhouette rose from the ground. The silhouette seemed to possess boundless strength, and the crimson saber in its hand exuded a fearsome aura. Tongluo War God. Upon seeing the silhouette behind Abutang, the Tongluo tribe members immediately grew excited. Tongluo War God was the war god that the Tongluo tribe had revered for thousands of years. He was the god of war, death, and glory. The Tongluo tribe had never feared death, because they believed that they would return to the embrace of the Tongluo war god after their deaths, and they would share the glory of their god. This was also the blueprint for the Tongluo tribe's ultimate art. On top of that, the Tongluo war god would take different forms depending on their cultivation. Even though the young general had only summoned the most basic form of the Tongluo war god, It was already an extremely powerful ultimate art. At true martial realm 1 Dan, there was almost no one who could stand against it. Young General, kill him. Overwhelmed by excitement, a Tongluo tribe member waved his arms and shouted loudly in the Tongluo language. The martial arts of the Tongluo tribe weren't meant for sparring, but for war and slaughter. Hong Long. On the other hand, Abutong reacted swiftly. Driving his stellar energy to its limits and summoning the Tongluo war god, Abutong abruptly halted his movements, and his right fist shot forth like a cannonball. He had executed another secret art. Army Breaker. An incomparably tyrannical and tragic aura burst forth from Abutong's body. With a flash of crimson light, Abutong stepped on the halo beneath his feet, and as if a bolt of lightning, he charged toward Wang Chong at a speed far greater than before. Hong Long. Abutong's powerful punch tore apart the area where Wang Chong had been standing a moment ago. Dust billowed into the air, and the ground beneath him cracked open. Abutong, is this all you've got? A cold sneer sounded from behind. Amidst the shocked exclamations of the crowd, Abutong turned around, only to see 3 identical Wang Chong talking to him. Spectre steps. Gongzi has cultivated it to the pinnacle. 10 steps away, Su Qi Nieyan Gaofeng, and the others exclaimed in delight. Everyone knew that Wang Chong possessed an extremely unique movement technique, known as spectre steps, and they had seen it before. What they didn't know was that Wang Chong had actually cultivated the spectre steps to the pinnacle, allowing him to conjure up 3 identical figures simultaneously. In the hands of others, this ultimate art might only be useful for escaping and evading enemies. But everyone knew that it wasn't as simple as it seemed in the hands of Wang Chong. Great! With this ultimate art, Gongzi will be able to deal with Abutong. Zhuang Jinping exclaimed excitedly. If Abutong couldn't discern the real Wang Chong, not only would he be helpless against Wang Chong might even be able to take advantage of him. Back in the deflecting blade manor, they had crossed blows with Wang Chong before. This point couldn't be any clearer. Even though Wang Chong's cultivation realm wasn't much higher than yours, he was always able to find your weakness and exploit it. Interesting. Abutong's eyes flickered, and a moment later he chuckled. Wang Chong's movement technique was indeed profound, but Abutong had seen it many times before, so he couldn't be bothered with it at all. At the end of the day, this was just an embroidered pillow, a gaudy ultimate technique. On the battlefield, such ultimate arts were the most useless. In a battle between cultivators, what mattered the most was the strength of the other party. Hee Wang Chong, I don't know what you're planning to do. However, if you think that you can defeat me just like that, you're sorely mistaken. Abutong's lips curled into a mocking smile. Those who could survive the battlefield weren't limited to their size alone. Wang Chong had chosen the wrong opponent to use this move on. Today, he would make him suffer an incomparably miserable defeat. Wang. In the blink of an eye, Abutong had changed his move. Hong Long. Space trembled as the Tongluo war god behind Abutong spread open his arms and roared vaguely. At the same time, a bizarre sight suddenly occurred. The thousands of tiny blood blades around Abutong began whirling, and like a raging gale, they flew toward Wang Chong. These hair-raising blood blades were densely packed together, and they surrounded Wang Chong, cutting off all of his escape routes. Even the location where the silhouette had appeared had been sealed off. This is bad. Everyone retreat. Gongzi, be careful. Chapter 301. Abutong's fearsome trembling blood blades weren't just directed at Wang Chong, but the others behind him as well. This was a battle habit of the Tongluo tribe. On the battlefield, the Tongluo tribe didn't have the habit of holding back. As long as they could kill their opponent, they wouldn't mind using a sledgehammer. In fact, it was the same for the internal duels of the Tongluo tribe as well. In a battle, no one would hold back. As the Tongluo tribe's duels were completely different from sparring, there was a high chance of death in the internal duels of the Tongluo tribe. This move of Abutong's had dragged the others into it. This move isn't enough to deal with me. Wang Chong looked at the countless blood blades that had sealed every inch of his movements, and he chuckled. In the next instant, without any hesitation, Wang Chong flicked his fingers and so, Every single one of his fingers was 100 zhang in length. With a flick of his 10 fingers, hundreds of sword threads shot forth in the blink of an eye. Every single one of these sword threads accurately struck a tiny blood blade. But upon coming into contact with Wang Chong's sword threads, those seemingly invincible blood blades shattered like fragile glass. With just a few flicks of his fingers, Wang Chong's sword threads were able to shatter all of the tiny and dangerous blood blades in the air. This was the result of Wang Chong's hard work over this period of time. Wang Chong had tempered his sword fingers and sword qi repeatedly, shrinking and strengthening them one after another. The final result was that Wang Chong was able to shoot more than a dozen sword threads with a single finger, and he could even control them as he pleased. As powerful as Abi Tong's Tongluo tribe secret art was, it wasn't even worth a mention before Wang Chong's art of life massacre. Hong Long. Almost at the same time that Wang Chong shattered all the blood blades, a pair of fists the size of bowls shattered the void and smashed down from the sky at lightning speed. Even though Wang Chong managed to neutralize the thousands of blood blades, Abi Tong's ability to grasp the right timing was far superior to that of an ordinary cultivator. However, Abu Tong had also made use of this opportunity to force Wang Chong to face him head-on. As you wish. Wang Chong's laughter echoed in the air. This time, Wang Chong raised his fists and faced Abi Tong's mountainous fists head-on. Young master. At the back of the battlefield, Zhuang Jingping, Su Qi, and the others felt their hearts tighten and their lips go dry. No one had expected Wang Chong to choose not to dodge this time. Wang Chong's cultivation was lower than Abi Tong's, but his movement technique was superior to Abi Tong's. Under such circumstances, dodging was the best course of action. However, Wang Chong had chosen the most disadvantageous method. Hong Long. In the next instant, before everyone's shocked gazes, Wang Chong's arms shook for a moment before blocking Abi Tong's steel fists. Wang. Abi Tong's face warped, and for the first time, shock surfaced in his eyes. This is impossible. Abu Tong stared at Wang Chong in shock. He knew that even a cultivator of the same cultivation realm wouldn't be a match for him. Needless to say, an origin energy realm cultivator. Yet, Wang Chong actually managed to block his attack. How could such a thing be possible? The rebound from Abi Tong's arms was incomparably powerful, and it didn't seem like something an origin energy realm cultivator should be capable of. Abu Tong was an experienced fighter, but he had never encountered such a situation before. This fellow, how can he possess such strength? Behind Abu Tong, all of the Tongluo tribe members were dumbfounded. They were even more shocked by this outcome than Abu Tong. As the young general of the Tongluo tribe, there was no doubt that Abu Tong was talented. Yet, no one could have imagined that Wang Chong would be able to withstand Abi Tong's attack. How is this possible? Everyone muttered. All of a sudden, they felt a little panicked. Before this, none of them had considered the possibility that Abu Tong could lose. But now, no one dared to say such a thing. The development of the situation had exceeded their expectations. Abu Tong, you are too arrogant. You can't possibly think that you are the strongest person in this training camp, right? Wang Chong held Abu Tong firmly with his fists as he stared at Abi Tong's horrified eyes. He wasn't surprised at all by the sight before him. Abu Tong might have been shocked by the sight before him, but Wang Chong wasn't the least bit surprised by it. After mastering might of the barbaric god, and summoning the embodiment of the barbaric god, his strength was more than sufficient to stand against a true martial realm expert. Even though Wang Chong was still lacking in terms of strength, after all, there was still a gap between origin energy realm and true martial realm. It was more than enough for him to withstand Abi Tong's attack. Pung! With a burst of stellar energy, Wang Chong knocked Abu Tong away, and the two of them pulled apart. Abu Tong, you are almost done with your move. It's my turn now. Wang Chong looked at Abu Tong with a confident smile on his lips. In this short but intense clash, Wang Chong had already gained a rough understanding of Abi Tong's fighting style, the power of his halo, and his speed and reaction. Now it was time for him to counterattack. Abu Tong, if you can withstand this move of mine, I'll admit that I'm not a match for you. Amidst Abi Tong's bewildered gaze, Wang Chong's expression remained unperturbed as he executed his strongest secret art. Perhaps, this was also the strongest secret art of an origin energy realm cultivator. If he couldn't defeat Abutong with this move, then it would be impossible for him to defeat the other party. 8 steps of the furious flood dragon. Wang Chong took a step forward, and a powerful aura burst forth from his body, distorting the surrounding space. Everyone only saw a flash before their eyes before they lost sight of Wang Chong. Not good. Abutong suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. This was the first time he had felt it in his fight with Wang Chong. Without the slightest hesitation, Abutong released another burst of Jinqi, and thousands upon thousands of tiny blood blades burst forth in all directions. But Abutong's reaction was still too late. Pung 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 pung. 8 deafening explosions echoed in the air. However, this time, it wasn't the fist imprints that appeared on the walls. Instead, all of the fist imprints were directed toward a single point, toward Abutong. Roar! The silhouette of 8 furious serpents appeared in the air. And before anyone could react, a deafening roar sounded. The stellar energy around Abutong, along with the thousands upon thousands of dangerous blood blades, were instantly shattered by the 8 powerful and violent Jinqi. The immense force shattered the stellar energy around Abutong and smashed into his body. Abutong only had the time to cry out before he was smashed to the ground by Wang Chong's 8 steps furious serpent. Not good. Young general. Hurry up and stop him. Oh. The faces of the Tongluo tribe warped in horror. Without any hesitation, they immediately charged toward Wang Chong in an attempt to save Abutong. I'll kill anyone who dares to make a move. With a flash of light, Wang Chong suddenly leaped through the air and landed on Abutong's body. Holding him down with his left hand, he raised his right and sent a heavy punch toward Abutong. Wang Chong, how dare you? A ferocious glint flashed across Hu Jialuo's eyes. Just several zhang away from Wang Chong, he stopped for fear of harming Abutong. Other than the young general, he was the leader of the Tongluo tribe. To think that the battle between Abutong and Wang Chong would end in defeat. This was something that he had never expected, but no matter what, he had to snatch the young general back. He couldn't allow him to be harmed. Wang Chong, if the young general is harmed, you won't be able to bear the wrath of our Tongluo tribe. Hu Jialuo's eyes blazed with fury, as he made no attempt to conceal his threat. Even though the Tongluo tribe viewed dying in battle as an honor, they valued the lives of their tribesmen above all else. If Wang Chong dared to do anything, the 30,000 Tongluo elites were more than enough to wipe out the Wang clan and make them regret their actions. Humph. Hearing Hu Jialuo's words, Wang Chong's eyes turned cold, and rage surged in his chest. He had long heard that the Tongluo tribe liked to use their 30,000 Tongluo cavalry to threaten others. Even the scions of the prestigious clans were no exception. After all, the Tongluo tribe was a Hu. In order to avoid trouble, most people chose to keep their distance. But to meet Wang Chong, they were courting death. Humph. Are you trying to rebel? With a hand on Abutong's neck, Wang Chong abruptly lifted him up from the ground. The aura he emanated suddenly turned incomparably cold, and even Su Qi, Nie Yen, and the others were taken aback. What do you think this place is? With just 30,000 men, you dare to rebel? Don't forget, why did you surrender during Emperor Taizong's reign? If you dare to try 30,000 Tongluo cavalry, as long as you don't have a transfer order and dare to leave the camp, I will kill all 30,000 Tongluo cavalry, from top to bottom, from old to young. Spare no one. In his previous life, Wang Chong was the decisive Grand Marshal of the Central Plains. The number of people he had killed could even fill up a river. The Tongluo tribe had truly found the wrong person to threaten him. It has been 80 years since you submitted to the Tang dynasty, and you Tongluo still haven't learned your lesson? As expected, barbarians are hard to change. Don't you want to rebel? I'll grant your wish. Qi. A cold gleam flashed, and a 3-Qi sword pierced through Abutong's left shoulder. Blood flowed freely from the wound. Bastard! Madman, you're a madman! Hu Jialuo's eyes were blazing with rage, and his eyes were red with rage. The Tongluo tribe members behind him also had reddened eyes, and they looked as if they wanted to swallow Wang Chong alive. No one had expected Wang Chong to actually dare to attack, but not a single person dared to act recklessly. Everyone had been stunned by Wang Chong's attitude. Although they wanted nothing more than to cleave Wang Chong in two, the attitude Wang Chong had shown, his actions, and his demeanor convinced them that he was truly capable of doing such a thing. In Shangjing, all the scions of the great clans, and nobles would retreat upon encountering the Tongluo. Putting aside everything else, Great General Abusi might not have many soldiers under his command, but he was an imperial great general on the same level as Fomin Linta, Wang Zhongji, Zhang Shogui, Gao Xianji, and Gishu Han. He was deeply favored and trusted by the Holy Emperor. Just this fact alone made him someone no one could provoke. Moreover, the Chamberlain of Dependencies had repeatedly emphasized that one should accommodate the habits of the Hu, but this was completely useless against Wang Chong. Chapter 302. Looking at the furious Tongluo tribe members, Wang Chong sneered coldly. How could these fellows know that he wasn't even afraid of the regional commander's incident? So how could he possibly be afraid of their threats? They must have found the wrong person to be threatening him with such a thing. Furthermore, the regional commander's incident had been going on for a long time, and it had only been temporarily suppressed after Wang Chong entered the Kunwa training camp. If he didn't kill the chicken to scare the monkey, similar incidents would only continue to happen in the future. I'll be taking Abutong away. Don't chase after me, you know the consequences. Wang Chong grabbed Abutong and lifted him up. Zhuang Jinping and Qi Weisi, bring Chun Burang to the deflecting blade manor. After saying those words, Wang Chong turned around and left. Soft voices could be heard from the surroundings. The instructors of the Kunwa training camp were rushing over. Without a doubt, Wang Chong knew that someone must have informed them of the matter. Abutong and the others had been outsmarted by their own intelligence. In order to deal with them, the instructors of the main peak had been sent away. It was too late for them to seek the help of the instructors now. A single Abutong doesn't have that much influence. There's no doubt that King Qi is involved in this matter. Wang Chong thought as a figure surfaced in his mind. Zheng Xian. Wang Chong vaguely remembered that the leader of the examinees in the Kunwa training camp, King Qi, whom Ding Mingxin had sided with, was called Zheng Xian. Wang Chong didn't believe that Zheng Xian would abandon such a good opportunity. Furthermore, a hot-headed Abutong didn't have that much influence. Wang Chong quickly left with Abutong. With the unconscious Abutong in the middle, the instructors wouldn't be able to tell them apart even if they were to see them. Not to mention, every single instructor had a heavy responsibility to carry out their training. They didn't have the time to interfere in this matter. Damn it! Not long after Wang Chong and the others left, Zheng Xian rushed over with a group of instructors. Looking at the empty hall, Zheng Xian's expression turned extremely ugly. Zheng Xian had never expected that Wang Chong would be able to defeat Abutong. This mission was a complete failure. After an unknown period of time, Abutong was jolted awake by a slight chill. When he opened his eyes, he saw the ground a dozen meters away from him, as well as the strong wind in the air. Bastard! Bastard! I won't let you off. In an instant, Abutong regained his senses and struggled violently in midair. Wang Chong, I will kill you. An angry voice resounded in the air. Abutong, if I were you, I would choose to remain quiet so as to not attract the attention of the entire training camp. At this moment, an extremely lazy and leisurely voice came from below. Wang Chong held a cup of tea in his hand, and 7 or 8 people were seated around a table, sipping on their tea silently. Even though your Tongluo subordinates have already seen it. In midair, Abutong suddenly shuddered involuntarily. Turning his gaze downward, Abutong saw a majestic courtyard. Halfway up the mountain, Abutong saw Hajaro, and a group of agitated, furious, and eccentric Tongluo tribesmen. However, this wasn't what shocked Abutong the most. What shocked him the most was that he suddenly realized the situation he was in. He was being tied naked to a tall pole by Wang Chong. Abutong's face immediately turned ghastly pale. You! Abutong's body trembled, and flames spewed from his eyes. The immense humiliation he felt left him on the verge of fainting. What you? This is just a small punishment for you. Seated on a purple rattan chair, Wang Chong sipped on the last mouthful of fragrant tea. By the side, Gao Feng filled Wang Chong's cup for him. Also, let me remind you that even though many people have seen it, not all of them have. Of course, if your voice had been any louder, it would have been an entirely different matter. However, I believe that I won't mind the entire training camp coming over to watch your disgraceful performance. Wang Chong said nonchalantly. Upon hearing Wang Chong's words, Abutang finally noticed a huge crowd on White Tiger Peak. Many of them were looking at him and pointing at him. Abutang's heart turned cold. His towering rage was immediately replaced by fear. Abutang had lost. He had lost to Wang Chong. But Abutang didn't expect Wang Chong's means to be so vicious. This was a huge humiliation. Abutang was shocked, anxious, and infuriated. He was already severely injured, and under the immense humiliation, he fainted once more. Gongzi, is this really fine? On the other side of the red sandalwood table, Chen Burang held onto a cup of fragrant tea, with an uneasy expression on his face. This matter had started because of him, and Chen Burang hadn't witnessed the entire battle. On the other hand, Wang Chong's treatment of Abutang left him feeling uneasy. After all, Chen Burang also knew that Abutang was the son of the Tongluo Great General Abutang. One was an imperial great general, and the other was from a clan of ministers and generals. What are you afraid of? If we don't teach him a lesson, will he learn his lesson? Wang Chong waved his hands nonchalantly. Besides, this isn't just to humiliate him. This is to serve as a warning to others. If we don't do this, there will only be more trouble in the future. At the very least, they should reconsider whether it's worth it to do such a thing. Everyone fell silent before nodding their heads. In truth, they had no objections to Wang Chong's decision. There were some things that they couldn't do. However, Wang Chong was the son of Duke Jiao, the son of a wise minister of the Tang dynasty. In this aspect, he was completely different from them. If Wang Chong was the one who did this, even if Abutang were to be humiliated, he wouldn't be able to vent his anger. No, we'll listen to Gongzi's decision. Gongzi has his own plans. Su Qi said. Chen Burang was simply too kind. Back then, when he saw Wang Chong being pummeled by a bunch of people, Su Qi had also flown into a rage. But on the other hand, Chen Burang didn't think so. However, Gongzi's recovery medicine was indeed formidable. In just a short moment, Chen Burang's injuries seemed to have gotten much better. The swelling on his face was also no longer visible. In the end, Chen Burang still nodded his head. Even though he still felt a little apologetic, after working together for so long, Chen Burang trusted Wang Chong's capabilities. This wasn't because of Wang Chong's background, but because he had been through life and death together. Not to mention, Wang Chong had even paid a personal visit to the Holy Emperor, and he had single-handedly stirred up the entire regional commander's incident. Many of the things that he had done were unimaginable for people of his age. It's about time. I believe that the people from the training camp will be here soon. Su Qi, bring 2 men with you to bring Abutang to the training camp. Hang him there for a while longer before releasing him. Wang Chong instructed. Yes, Gongzi. Su Qi nodded. I won't. In the future, you should bring a bow and arrows with you. Even though your martial arts are decent, it's still insufficient to deal with someone like Abutang. However, if you have a bow in your hands, Abutang won't be able to do anything to you. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong tapped his right index finger lightly as he spoke to Chen Burang. In truth, Chen Burang wasn't weak. Under normal circumstances, Abutang's actions would have resulted in the deaths of quite a few people around him. However, he didn't have a bow on him, so he couldn't do anything about it. This time, Chen Burang accepted Wang Chong's words humbly. You all shouldn't head to the training grounds on the main peak for the time being. Also, there's something else I need to tell you all. Without any hesitation, Wang Chong revealed the spirit vein he had discovered to the group. Upon hearing that Wang Chong had a spirit vein all to himself, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Chen Burang looked at Wang Chong in astonishment. Even though he was a young hunter, he wasn't completely isolated from the world. Naturally, he knew what a spirit vein was. The Kungwa training camp was built on top of a small spirit vein. This was something that could only be chanced upon. Even to the prestigious clans, it was something that only existed in legends. But now, Wang Chong was saying that he had a spirit vein. I was intending to tell you all about this later. But since it has happened, there's no need to wait. Wang Chong said impassively. The deflecting blade manner was connected to the spirit vein. If it didn't have something that could swiftly raise one's cultivation, how could it attract people to join it? Wang Chong was intending to tell them about this matter later. But at this moment, Wang Chong had changed his mind. Firstly, it would reduce friction, and secondly, it would swiftly raise the strength of Chen Burang, Su Qi, and the others. This way, they wouldn't have to face such a situation in the future. Gongzi, are you serious? Nie Yin asked with a trembling voice. Even now, he still couldn't believe that Wang Chong had a spirit vein. That thing was too illusory, and it wasn't something that could be measured by one's standing or influence. As it was too illusory and shocking, everyone couldn't help but feel that it was unreal. He, whether it's true or not, you'll know when the time comes. Wang Chong chuckled at the confused look on his face. After saying those words, Wang Chong put down his teacup and stood up. Outside the deflecting blade manor, Wang Chong saw two familiar figures walking over. Brother Jiang, Brother Chai. Wang Chong gazed at the two figures walking in from outside deflecting blade manor. They were Jiang Feng and Chai Ziyi, who had paid Wang Chong a visit after the Gogrian assault, and presented him with a gift. Both of them were dukes of the Tang dynasty. One of them was a meritorious minister whose ancestor had pacified the western regions, while the other was a valiant general who had followed Emperor Taizong to conquer the world. In terms of background, they weren't the least bit inferior to Wang Chong. Why? Are you two here for Wuxia as well? Wang Chong went straight to the point. That's indeed the case. Brother Wang, I apologize. I was entrusted by someone else, so I couldn't refuse. Jiang Feng and Chai Ziyi said apologetically. They had only just gotten acquainted with Wang Chong, so it was a little abrupt for them to make such a request. Just that, the person who had entrusted the request to them was of extraordinary status, so they found it hard to reject the request. Brother Wang, you've already beaten him up, vented your anger, and humiliated him. May I ask if you can give me and Brother Chai some face, and let Wuxia off for the time being? The Wang clan and Wuxia's lineage are the backbone of the empire, so we really shouldn't offend each other over such a matter. This will be beneficial to the royal court, the Wang clan, and the Tongluo people. Jiang Feng said. Even though he hadn't officially taken over the clan yet, Jiang Feng's words were well-rounded, befitting of the eldest son of a prestigious clan. Clearly, Jiang Feng was on a diplomatic mission this time. It's not that I'm unwilling to let him off, but he's unwilling to let me off. Brother Jiang and Brother Chai should know that Abutong was the one who sought trouble with me. It's just that he underestimated his opponent this time. If I were to let him off just like that, wouldn't I be letting him off too easily? Wouldn't there be more such incidents in the future? Wang Chong said impassively. Jiang Feng and Chai Ziyi choked on their words, and they immediately felt awkward. Before Wang Chong, they naturally wouldn't say that Chen Burang was the one who provoked them. Chapter 303. However, if it's Brother Jiang and Brother Chai, it's not impossible for us to take them away. However, now isn't the right time. Just when the duo thought that they were going to return empty-handed, Wang Chong suddenly changed the topic. May I know when Brother Wang is referring to? Jiang Feng and Chai Ziyi were delighted to hear those words. They didn't harbor much hope in this trip, and they didn't expect Wang Chong to agree to it. In a while, when the time is right, we'll be able to release them. Wang Chong replied calmly. May I know if we can release them today? Jiang Feng probed. Wang Chong nodded. Thank you, Brother Wang. Jiang Feng and Chai Ziyi were delighted. The duo had been entrusted by someone else to persuade Wang Chong on this trip. To be honest, the duo wasn't willing to do such a thing. After all, the Wang clan was an ally of the Jiang clan and Chai clan, and doing such a thing would hurt their relationship. However, it was hard to turn down a favor. Yet, Wang Chong had made an exception and agreed to it. As long as they could release them today, they didn't care about the others. If it wasn't for them, why would they go through so much trouble? Brother Jiang and Brother Chai, would you like to have a cup of tea? Wang Chong flicked his finger and passed 2 empty purple teacups over. Ha ha ha, I couldn't have asked for more. It's rare for young Master Chong to treat us to tea. How can we not have a cup or two? The duo chuckled heartily as they took the teacups and sat down leisurely. Prestigious clans would often encounter situations where they had no other choice. Take the Duke of Lu residence for example. In order to save Su Hanshan's younger sister, Wang Chong owed the Duke of Lu residence a favor. In the future, if the Duke of Lu residence were to ask for help, the Wang clan wouldn't turn them down. Such situations were extremely common in prestigious clans, and Wang Chong had grown up in this circle. Naturally, he was familiar with such situations. Putting aside the matter regarding Abutong, the atmosphere was still very harmonious. Jiang Feng and Chai Zi also expressed their desire to join the group. Unknowingly, several hours passed. Stinking brats, you really know how to enjoy life. A deep voice filled with yang energy suddenly sounded in Zhang Xian's ears. Accompanied by loud footsteps, the armored Zhao Qianqiu and Zhou Huang walked in with widened strides. Kid, you've messed around enough. Isn't it time to hand him over? Zhao Qianqiu strode over to the red sandalwood table, snatched the teacup in front of Wang Chong, and downed it in a single gulp. Haha, Instructor Zhao is also here to persuade us? Wang Chong chuckled as he allowed Zhao Qianqiu to snatch his teacup away, before pouring himself another one. Hee brat, what nonsense are you talking about? If I didn't stop them, the instructors in the training camp would have already rushed over. You still don't know what's good for you. Zhao Qianqiu raised his hand and gave Wang Chong a tight slap on the back of his head. He had learned of the conflict between Wang Chong and Abutong a little too late, because someone had deliberately suppressed the news. In the end, when Zhao Qianqiu didn't want to know about it anymore, someone had intentionally exposed the matter. Zhao Qianqiu wasn't a fool, so he knew what was going on. On one hand, he was infuriated. Weren't those bastards going too far? This was a training camp that the Holy Emperor had personally set up. Wasn't this a little too much? On the other hand, Zhao Qianqiu was displeased as well. This was the first time such a brawl had occurred ever since the establishment of the training camp. If he were to let this matter rest without any punishment, it would be letting them off too easily. Wouldn't such incidents continue to happen in the future? He had to teach them a lesson. On this point, Zhao Qianqiu and Wang Chong shared the same sentiments. Initially, the matter between Wang Chong and Abutong was supposed to be heavily punished. However, this was the first time that Zhao Qianqiu had interfered in this matter. King Qi's influence was great, but it was still outside the training camp. The Bureau of Military Personnel couldn't interfere in this matter either. But Zhao Qianqiu was different. The lord in charge of the training camp was his direct superior. Zhao Qianqiu immediately looked for that lord to suppress this matter. Since Abutong was the one who started this matter, he had to teach him a harsh lesson, so as to instill fear in the future. Thus, Zhao Qianqiu didn't object to Wang Chong's actions in the slightest. That brat, there's a limit to everything. It's about time, let him go, Zhao Qianqiu said. The instructor and the examinees were supposed to maintain a certain distance from one another, and this was also a rule set by the higher-ups. However, Zhao Qianqiu did enjoy spending time with this lad. This lad's personality was really likable. Su Qi, you heard the instructor's words, right? Bring Abutong down. Wang Chong gestured and Su Qi chuckled. Understanding his intentions, he led a few men to untie Abutong from the pole. The matter with the deflecting blade manor had come to an end, but Abutong's humiliation had just begun. Let's go. Su Qi called Nie Yin and Gao Feng over, and left through another side door. Seeing Abutong being brought away, Jiang Feng and Chai Zi heaved a sigh of relief. Brat, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Come, let's play around. Shortly after Su Qi left, Zhao Qianqiu suddenly whipped out a chess set from his sleeves and smashed it on the table. Clearly, he had come prepared. I'll do as you say. Since the instructor has spoken, how can I possibly dare to disobey? Wang Chong chuckled as he sat down calmly. Ever since Zhao Qinxiu lost 5 rounds in a row, he had become addicted to chess. I believe that you should know how important this operation is to His Highness. If it's really as you said, and there's a massive spirit vein in the depths of this mountain range, it will be of great help to His Highness. No matter what, I hope that you won't disappoint His Highness. The gray-robed elder with triangular eyes said. Hee, ghostly hands, don't worry. My divination can't be wrong. Go forward. I will definitely be able to bring you to that hidden spirit vein that no one knows about. Mr. Taijia said confidently. The old man named Ghost Hand nodded and said no more. With a wave of his hands, he led the guards forward to clear a path. Along the way, they encountered thorns, venomous insects, venomous snakes, and ferocious beasts. Leading the yellow-robed guards, the elder hacked down the thorns and vines relentlessly. This was already the 3rd day that the group had been exploring the mountain range, but regardless of whether it was the veteran known as Ghostly Hands, the Mr. Seer known as Mr. Taijia, or the guards of extraordinary backgrounds, none of them said a word. In the boundless mountains, a group of people were like a bunch of insignificant ants, searching for something. Found it. It's right in front. After a day and night, just as the group was on the verge of exhaustion, Mr. Taijia raised his compass and pointed ahead. His voice suddenly grew louder and louder. In his hand, the fingernails of the compass trembled left and right, much more violently than any other trembling. Hearing those words, the group was delighted. Spurring on with all their might, they opened a path through the dense forest. Kacha, when the last few brambles and trees in front of him fell, the view before him suddenly opened up with a rumble. Standing under a few densely packed trees, Zhang Xian looked ahead and saw a mountain that was several hundred zhang tall. The mountain was verdant and towered into the clouds. It was like a giant dragon lying on the ground, exuding a desolate aura. At this moment, even the triangular-eyed elder could feel a surge of concentrated spiritual energy gushing toward him. Being blown by the spiritual energy, the triangular-eyed elder shuddered, and he felt energized. This is great. The triangular-eyed elder was invigorated, and his entire body relaxed. Even though 4 days and 4 nights had taken them a long time, it was all worth it. They had finally found the secret treasure, hidden in the depths of the mountain range. Only with this unprecedented spirit vein would the 3rd prince's situation improve significantly. He would be able to recruit more experts, and he would be able to gain a greater advantage in the battle against the other princes. Mr. Taijia, you have done us a great service. His Highness will surely be delighted. Ghost Hand's voice rose a few notches, his expression excited and resounding. Men, quickly send someone to inform His Highness. But before Ghostly Hands could finish his words, he was interrupted by a shocked exclamation. How could this be? Lord, look over there. Why is there a house there? A few royal guards suddenly pointed in the direction of the mountain peak and exclaimed in shock. Ghostly Hand's voice came to an abrupt halt. Even the exhausted Mr. Taijia behind him shuddered, and they hurriedly turned their gazes over. Hung Long. In the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, several golden palaces with overhanging eaves and arches towered above the spirit vein, faintly discernible above the clouds. As though a bolt of lightning had struck his head, Ghostly Hands was stunned. Behind him, Taijia was also stunned. He didn't even realize that he had dropped the golden double-layered compass to the ground. How is this possible? Chapter 304. Dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was especially so for Mr. Taijia and Ghostly Hands. The two of them couldn't even speak a word. Taijia, what is going on? Didn't you say that this place is still undeveloped? Does no one know about it other than us? Ghost Hand's expression was cold as he gritted his teeth and spat out word by word. That's impossible. Mr. Taijia took a few steps forward. He didn't hear Ghostly Hand's voice at all. At this moment, he was even more shocked than Ghostly Hands. His divination had already reached an extremely high level 10 years ago. In the entire capital, there were only a handful of people who could match up to him in divination. Based on his divination, There was no one who knew about this place. Other than him, it was impossible for anyone to have arrived before him. But the truth was right before his eyes. There was no doubt that someone had discovered this place earlier than him. The buildings were connected to one another, and they were beautifully constructed. It was impossible for such a complex to be constructed within a short period of time. "Mister, is it possible that they haven't discovered it yet?" A guard beside the third prince asked with a sliver of hope in his eyes. "Impossible," Mr. Taijia refuted without any hesitation. "This place is remote, and it's separated from the main road. If they hadn't discovered something, they wouldn't have constructed such a huge structure here. But is it possible that they are just here to enjoy the scenery? Impossible. Have you forgotten about the venomous snakes along the way?" This time, even the guard who had asked the question fell silent. Along the way, the crowd had thought of all sorts of possibilities. They had thought that it was impossible to find it, and Mr. Taijia had made a mistake in his divination. But what they didn't expect was that someone had arrived before them. Upon seeing the rows of buildings at the peak of the mountain, everyone's heart turned cold. "Mr. Taijia, is this the spirit vein that you divined for me?" Ghostly Hands asked coldly. His triangular eyes were burning with rage. If not for the third prince's extreme respect for him, he would have killed him just by looking at the scene in front of him. "This is indeed a spirit vein," Mr. Taijia said. But before he could finish his words, Ghostly Hands interrupted him coldly. "Why don't you try divining again?" Whoosh! Without needing Ghostly Hands to say anything, Mr. Taijia raised his hand, and the golden double-layered compass on the ground flew into Mr. Taijia's hand. Casually plucking a leaf near the spirit vein, Mr. Taijia began his divination once more. How did this happen? The sudden appearance of a completely different divination left Mr. Taijia dumbstruck. His face had already turned pale after a few days of calculations, but now his face became even paler. Mr. Taijia had immersed himself in divination for more than half of his life, so he was confident in his divination. But at this very moment, Taijia realized that his divination was completely ineffective. In his entire life, this was the first time he had encountered a situation where he was completely wrong. "What's going on? What's going on?" Master Taijia's body trembled as he muttered under his breath. The confidence that he had built up for most of his life was suddenly shattered at this moment. Baleful Een, Baleful Een. It's not just the effect of Baleful Een. The Een specters could not have interfered so much with me. There must be other reasons. The fog blocked the river. The fog blocked the river. This was the interference of external forces. The wind blew and the clouds surged, changing constantly. Who in the world built these palaces and interfered with my divination? Mr. Taijia looked at the palaces in the clouds, and his mind was in a state of chaos. The divination result on the compass was fog blocking the river. This was a divination that would only appear when one's fate was extremely resilient, making it difficult for one to divine them. However, with his divination cultivation, he had divined countless people, from nobles to ministers, but he had never encountered such a situation. Gazing at the misty spirit vein in the distance, Taijia unhesitatingly divined the location of the person who beat him to it. No matter what, he had to know who the owner of the palaces was. Who was it that had snatched it away from him? Even his divination had been disturbed. Wang. As though a huge boulder had fallen from the sky, Master Taijia felt an incomparably heavy pressure weighing down on him. The resilience of the other party's fate was far more difficult to divine than he had imagined. Who in the world is that person? Master Taijia felt a chill run down his spine. He had just started divining, but he already felt as though he was shouldering a mountain. He had never encountered such a situation before. But the more he felt this way, the more he wanted to know. The third prince had placed great importance on this operation, so he had to get an answer no matter what. Boom! Just as Mr. Taijia was about to harden his heart and continue his divination, a powerful force suddenly struck him like a bolt of lightning. Master Taijia felt a sharp pain in his heart, and 2 streams of blood flowed from his nose. The consecutive days of divination had already left his face pale and fatigued. Adding another injury to his injuries, his vision darkened, and he fell backward. Mr. Taijia! Mr. Taijia! Mr. Alarmed, the crowd hurriedly rushed forward to catch Master Taijia. Lord, what do we do? The crowd turned to look at the elder known as Phantom Hands. I'm fine. I just fainted from the exhaustion. Phantom Hands placed his finger on Master Taijia's neck to check his pulse. Even though he wasn't proficient in divination, he had learned from the third prince that divination was extremely taxing on one's mental energy as well. The more unfamiliar and detailed the divination was, the more mental energy and effort one would have to expend. Clearly, Master Taijia had overexerted himself and fainted. I'll let you off lightly then. Phantom Hands stood up and said. He was initially filled with rage, but with Master Taijia unconscious, there was nowhere for him to vent his anger. Lord, what should we do now? His Highness has high expectations for this operation. Why don't we kill everyone on the mountain right now? As long as we move swiftly, we won't be able to leave any traces behind. Seeing that Master Taijia had fainted, one of the third prince's guards suddenly stepped forward and said. As he spoke, he even made a cutting motion with his sword. They were the third prince's trusted guards, and as long as he commanded them to stay, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to slaughter everyone on the mountain. Wait a moment. Phantom Hands wasn't as reckless as the other party, but he had the same thought as well. There's no need to rush this matter. Let's check with the Court of Judicial Review first to see if this land is ownerless or not. If it is, we'll buy it right away. By then, no matter how many buildings they build, they will all belong to us. However, if the other party is prepared, they should have already sold it. Let's find the buyer first. If it's an unknown individual or a wealthy merchant without any backing, we'll have to negotiate with them. We'll use the third prince's name to get them to give up the land. If the other party doesn't know what's good for them, we'll kill them, after which, we'll come back here and get rid of them. Phantom Hands' thoughts were logical, and it was clear that this wasn't his first time doing such a thing. But what if the other party has backing? One of the guards asked. Phantom Hands sneered disdainfully, and a bone-chilling glint gleamed in his eyes. Do you think that there's a backing greater than the third prince? I understand. Everyone lowered their heads, tacitly understanding. Without alerting anyone, they brought Mr. Taijia with them and retreated silently. Unbeknownst to them, several li away from them, a pair of eyes was silently watching them. Only after they left with Mr. Taijia did the evil emperor heave a sigh of relief and slowly close his eyes. The investigation into the Court of Judicial Review went much smoother than they had expected. In the Court of Judicial Review, there was a miniature map of the mountains and rivers around the capital. All they had to do was point out the location of the mountain to obtain the information they wanted. Phantom Hands and the others had imagined all sorts of possibilities beforehand, but when they finally found out who the owner of the spirit vein was, they were all dumbfounded. Wang Chong, the person who alarmed the Holy Emperor with the regional commander's incident and flipped the entire royal court upside down? Duke Jiu's grandson. Someone from the Wang clan. Upon hearing the answer, everyone, including the awakened Mr. Taijia, was dumbfounded. A behemoth. No one could have imagined that it would be someone from the Wang clan. Upon hearing the name of the owner of the spirit vein, this was the only name that came to everyone's mind. The third prince was an offspring of the royal family, the successor to the throne in everyone's eyes. In a place like the Central Plains, any power or background was nothing more than a joke before the third prince. This was also the reason why Phantom Hands wasn't afraid of the background of the other party. But the Wang clan? This was an answer that no one could have imagined. The Wang clan wasn't a noble clan, but they were even more powerful than one. When the Holy Emperor was still young, the old master of the Wang clan was one of the greatest contributors to his rise to the throne. The Holy Emperor had said many times before his officials that if not for the old master of the Wang clan, the person known as Duke Jiu, he wouldn't have been able to reach his current heights. Even the Tang dynasty wouldn't have been as powerful as it was today. In fact, after the old master of the Wang clan retired, the emperor even opened a four-quarters embassy to house the old master of the Wang clan. From this, one could imagine the relationship between the two. If the old master of the Wang clan were to run to the Holy Emperor and lodge a complaint against the third prince would be in trouble. All of a sudden, everyone felt apprehensive. They mustn't touch the Wang clan. They mustn't touch the Wang clan. Even if the third prince were to learn of it, he wouldn't allow them to do something so risky. What's going on? How did that lad know of the existence of the spirit vein? Is that son of the Wang clan actually so powerful? Phantom Hands, who wouldn't make a sound even if a blade was pressed against his neck, suddenly frowned. This matter was extremely troublesome. Lord, what do we do now? The leader of the guards from before said. Don't act recklessly. We mustn't touch the Wang clan at this moment. We can only think of another way. Phantom Hands said with a pained expression. Never would he have thought that the item that he and the third prince had set their eyes on would be taken by Wang Chong. So he's the owner of the palace? At this moment Taijia, who had just woken up not too long ago, was also deep in thought. For most of his life, he had been either a noble, an official, or a descendant of the royal family like the third prince. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a strong interest in this 15-year-old young man, whom he had never heard of in the capital. The person who could cause him to suffer a backlash from the heavens while divining was definitely not an ordinary person. No matter what, he had to uncover the secrets that the young man was hiding. With this thought in mind, Taijia, Phantom Hands, and the others left the Court of Judicial Review. 3 days later, a shocking piece of news shook the entire capital. Amidst the mountains outside the capital, at a location less than 30 li away, an unprecedented massive spirit vein was discovered. The concentration of spiritual energy in this spirit vein was more than 10 times that of the 3 newly constructed Shinwei, Longwei, and Kunwa training camps. It was also far more concentrated than any of the spirit veins in the capital. Even across the entire world, there were few that could match up to this newly discovered spirit vein. 10 days of cultivation on this spirit vein was equivalent to several months of hard work. As the news spread, the entire capital was in an uproar. And along with the news, a name also appeared in everyone's ears, and that was Chapter 305. His communication with Zhao Qianqiu went smoothly. As expected of the instructor who taught Wang Chong the art of command in his previous life, his standing in the training camp was far above that of the other instructors. Wang Chong quickly explained the situation of Gao Feng, Nie Yan, and the others to him, and the matter was swiftly resolved. Gao Feng, Nie Yan Su Qi, Chen Burang, and Sun Jiming weren't allowed to leave the training camp without orders. However, through Zhao Qianqiu's efforts, the 5 of them managed to obtain special permission. Even though Zhao Qianqiu didn't have as many restrictions as Wang Chong, Su Hanshan, and the others, the 5 of them still received special permission to move around freely for at least half a month every month. And they didn't have to stay in Kunwa training camp. Wang Chong didn't waste any time, and sent them to the spirit vein to cultivate. Firstly, he could prevent a similar incident with Abutong from happening again. Secondly, he could also raise the strength of those around him. These people were the future generals that Wang Chong had set his eyes on. The stronger they were, the more advantageous it would be for the Tang dynasty, and the more useful they would be to him in the future. Wang Chong! Wang Chong! Wang Gongzi! Wang Gongzi! 3 days later, while Wang Chong was soaking in the Tai Guanyin tea in the deflecting blade manner, an earth-shattering roar suddenly sounded from outside. Along with these excited shouts, dense footsteps could be heard, as well as the bustling voices of the crowd. What's going on? Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian stared at one another in bewilderment, and the teacups in their hands nearly fell to the ground. The deflecting blade manor was still a distance away from the training camp. On top of that, Wang Chong had always been a cautious person, so he didn't recruit too many people in the training camp. As such, other than his own people, no one else would come here, not to mention, with such a huge commotion outside, it was clear that this wasn't the case. Jingdian, why don't you go over to take a look? Wang Chong said as he looked across. Nodding, Zhao Jingdian silently took his teacup and left. He had been with Wang Chong for a long time, and he was slowly influenced by Wang Chong and liked drinking tea. Wang Chong had originally believed that Zhao Jingdian would be back soon, but it took a full 5 minutes for Zhao Jingdian to appear at the gate of the courtyard, a frightened expression on his face. "What's going on? Why were you gone for so long?" Wang Chong frowned. "Young master, there are many people outside. All of them want to join Deflecting Blade Manor." Zhao Jingdian organized his thoughts, a strange expression on his face. "What?" Wang Chong was surprised. He pressed his hands on the armrests of the purple rattan chair and stood up. "Join the Deflecting Blade Manor." He didn't even send out an invitation. So where did so many people come from? Shall I go out and take a look? Without another word, Wang Chong immediately walked out. Boom! Walking out of the gates of Deflecting Blade Manor, Wang Chong felt like he had stepped into a completely different world. The mountain winds buffeted him, and as he walked out of the gates of Deflecting Blade Manor, he felt like he had stepped into another world. Zhao Jingdian had said that there were many people outside, but when Wang Chong walked out, he realized that there were many people outside. Halfway up the mountain, there was a huge crowd, numbering in the hundreds or even thousands. Without a doubt, the white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, and azure dragon branches were all here. "Wang Gongzi, please accept me." "Wang Gongzi, a wish to join your Deflecting Blade Manor." "Me too." Me. "Wang Gongzi is here. Everyone hurry up." Upon seeing Wang Chong at the top of the mountain, the faces of the crowd flushed with excitement. What left Wang Chong even more surprised was that there were quite a few female disciples from Vermilion Bird Peak here. However, they were talking about something completely different from the others. So that's Wang Chong. How dashing. Wang Chong's mind was in a mess. What in the world was going on? Why would so many people suddenly gather here, intending to join his Deflecting Blade Manor? "Gongzi, these people are all here to join the Deflecting Blade Manor. For some reason, they found out that we extended an invitation to some of the people in the training camp. Some of them who initially didn't agree to join our Deflecting Blade Manor suddenly changed their minds. More importantly, for some reason, they found out that Gongzi is the owner of a massive spirit vein outside the capital." A leisurely voice sounded behind him. Unknowingly, Zhao Jingdian had followed him out, and as he walked down the slope, he reported the news he had just received. "What?" Wang Chong abruptly turned around and stared at Zhao Jingdian in shock. "Spirit vein. How did these people find out?" He didn't tell anyone about the spirit vein, and only his own people knew about it. However, Su Qi, Gao Feng, Nie Yan, and the others would never speak of it. He had absolute trust in these people. Furthermore, according to the rumors, Gongzi found a massive spirit vein. The origin energy there is extremely dense, and cultivating there for 10 days is equivalent to cultivating for several months. Thus, the people who have gathered here aren't just from our training camp, but from Xinwei and Longwei as well. In other words, other than those from our training camp, do the people outside know about it as well? Wang Chong said. "That's right." Zhao Jingdian nodded solemnly. In an instant, Wang Chong's complexion turned grim. The situation was far more serious than he had thought. If the news wasn't limited to Kunwa training camp, it meant that, other than the 3 great training camps, everyone in the capital knew about it as well. Wang Chong was well aware of the effects of the exposure of a massive spirit vein. None of the prestigious clans or influential clans would be able to resist the temptation. In his previous life, when the spirit vein exploded, everyone realized that there was a massive spirit vein within close proximity, but no one noticed it. In that instant, countless people felt the same pain and regret as Wang Chong. If not for that, Wang Chong wouldn't have gone to search for the spirit vein not long after his reincarnation. But the problem was, how did this matter get leaked? One must know that even the guards of the Wang family residence were clueless about the matter. They only knew that the young master wanted to build something, that, and that. At the very most, they only knew that the mountain that Wang Chong bought seemed to be rich in origin energy. They knew nothing else. This was how secretive Wang Chong was. But now, the news got out, and it wasn't from Wang Chong. Wang Chong's heart was in a mess. No matter what, he couldn't believe that Gao Feng and Nie Yin would betray him. Someone must have spread the news, Wang Chong thought. He was certain of this. Gao Feng and Nie Yin had just gone to the spirit vein, and such a thing happened. To be honest, Wang Chong was extremely displeased. Who was the one who spread the news? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He didn't like this feeling of being led around in the dark. Walala! Just as he was deep in thought, a snow-white messenger pigeon suddenly flew down from the sky. Wang Chong reached out and grabbed it. There was a simple letter tied to the pigeon's leg. Seeing the two familiar strokes of ink, Wang Chong immediately recognized it. It's a letter from Master. When Wang Chong's master sent a letter, there would always be two strokes of ink on the back. This was the unique mark of the evil emperor. In the few months that Wang Chong had been in the Kunwa training camp, this was the first time he received a letter from the spirit vein. As expected, after reading the contents of the letter, Wang Chong's frown deepened. However, his heart relaxed. Master, the evil emperor's letter wasn't long. It only mentioned that not long ago, a group of strangers suddenly appeared near the tail end of the spirit vein. Wang Chong's master had yet to recover his cultivation. Coupled with the distance, he wasn't able to see the situation clearly. He only knew that those people had extraordinary cultivation. A few of them were clearly wearing the uniform of the palace guards. One of them was even holding a compass in his hand. Although his master didn't say much, this information was already very helpful to Wang Chong. Sure enough, someone deliberately spread the news. It seems that even Master has received news of this matter. My place is already in such a mess. There must be many people visiting his place, Wang Chong said to himself. The matter of the spirit vein was a complete mess. The only consolation was that he was smart enough to spend tens of thousands of gold taels to buy the mountain range and the surrounding mountains. Furthermore, the reputation of the Wang clan was also very prominent. With the instructors of the imperial army stationed at the spirit vein and his grandfather's reputation, no one would dare to cause trouble in the capital. As long as he wasn't willing to sell the spirit vein, no one would be able to do anything to him, regardless of whether it was the prestigious clans, nobles, or officials. Most likely, this was also the reason why those people intentionally leaked the news to catch him off guard. Those who hold a compass in their hands must be seers. Only astrologers and fortune-tellers would use compasses. But how could a fortune-teller divine my spirit vein? Wang Chong was perplexed. Since a seer had appeared in the vicinity of the spirit vein, it did make sense. But more importantly, in his previous life, Wang Chong clearly remembered that there was no seer who could divine the massive spirit vein around the capital. That spirit vein was being interfered with by an immense amount of malevolent energy, and this would greatly affect divination. If not for this, the spirit vein wouldn't have exploded on its own during the apocalypse, resulting in a deluge of spiritual energy before it was discovered. But now, before that calamity had even descended, a seer had managed to divine his spirit vein. This was truly inconceivable. The future was completely different from what he remembered. Wang Chong. While he was deep in thought, he suddenly heard an impolite voice. At the bottom of the mountain, among the crowd, a valiant woman with a red tassel spear on her back separated the crowd and rushed up the mountain with large strides. Chapter 306. Brat, you actually found such a huge spirit vein outside the capital? When are you going to tell me about it? Marchioness E walked over and grabbed Wang Chong's shoulders tightly. With a slight exertion of strength, Wang Chong's bones began to creak. Even though he had reached Origin Energy Tier 9 Pinnacle, Wang Chong's cultivation was still a little lacking compared to Marchioness E. Don't worry, if Marchioness E wishes to cultivate there, you're welcome to do so anytime. You can visit that spirit vein whenever you want. There won't be any restrictions placed on you. Wang Chong said with a bitter smile on his face. Wave after wave of immense strength flowed through Marchioness Yi's arms, and it was completely disproportionate to her slender figure. Even though he had defeated a powerful opponent like Abusi, Wang Chong still felt that he was lacking compared to an opponent like Marchioness E. Brat, at least you're considerate. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Marchioness Yi's eyes lit up, and her displeasure turned into joy. She loosened her grip on Wang Chong's shoulders. By the way, there are also a few of my close friends. They are going too. No problem, bring them along. Wang Chong waved his hands without any hesitation. The spirit vein was huge, and it wouldn't make a difference even if a few more of them went. Furthermore, given the relationship between Wang Zhuyan and his second sister, Wang Chong wouldn't be so stingy. Brat, that's more like it. Marchioness Yi was delighted. She released her grip on Wang Chong's shoulders with an elated look on her face. Only after her scheme succeeded did Marchioness Yi noticed the deflecting blade manner behind Wang Chong. Your manner isn't too bad. Marchioness Yi seemed to be seeing it for the first time. It's been a long time since I built this manner. Wang Chong found it both hilarious and infuriating. Even though the Vermilion Bird Peak was a little far away, it shouldn't be impossible for him to know nothing about it, right? He had long heard from his second sister that Marchioness Yi was a martial arts fanatic, and it seemed like the rumors were true. Luo Cheng, bring Marchioness Yi in to rest and take a look around. Wang Chong pointed at a guard of the deflecting blade manner. Yes, young master. The guard quickly received the order and left. Young master, what do we do now? After Wang Chong had dealt with the terrifying Marchioness Yi, Zhao Jingdian finally spoke. Wang Chong frowned again. He looked at the crowd at the foot of the mountain in silence. Send someone to gather a list of names, and see who wants to join our deflecting blade manner. Pick a list and give it to me. Regarding the matter of the deflecting blade manner, I planned to take it one step at a time. But now perhaps there was no need to wait that long. Now is the best opportunity, Wang Chong said resolutely as he listened to the waves of fanatical cheers. As the saying goes, good fortune is accompanied by misfortune, and misfortune is accompanied by blessings. Although he had been schemed against and caught off guard, there were two sides to every coin. If he could make good use of this matter, it could be a blessing and an opportunity for him. Slowly, Wang Chong made up his mind. Following which, Wang Chong ordered all of the guards who were sent to stop the crowd to gather a list of names. The crowd, which was originally dissatisfied because of the obstruction, was instantly stirred up. Cheers for Wang Chong's name could be heard everywhere. Probably, not even the schemer could have expected that Wang Chong's reputation in the training camp would soar because of this matter. Walala. Just as Wang Chong was sending his men to gather a list of names, a white pigeon suddenly descended from the sky. Today was bound to be an eventful day. Wang Chong opened the letter on the leg of the white pigeon, and upon seeing Big Uncle's seal on it, he was taken aback. After a moment of hesitation, Wang Chong opened the letter and began reading through it. Big Uncle Wang Jin's letter was very ordinary, consisting of only a few simple lines. Most likely, he was asking Wang Chong if the massive spirit vein outside the capital really belonged to Wang Chong. But despite the seemingly ordinary letter, Wang Chong's heart slowly sank after reading it. In the letter, Big Uncle Wang Jin's words were extremely polite, completely different from his usual natural and casual tone. Based on Wang Chong's understanding of Big Uncle Wang Jin, this didn't seem like a request from him. Instead, it seemed like he was being entrusted by someone else to inquire about something. Given Big Uncle Wang Jin's current standing in the royal court, the number of people who could make him feel so conflicted could be counted on one's fingers. Wang Chong only had to think for a moment to figure it out. Sighing deeply, Wang Chong placed the letter down. His heart suddenly felt incredibly heavy. Most likely, the person who could make Big Uncle Wang Jin feel conflicted, making him stutter in the letter, but unable to say anything, was the first prince. Previously, when he received a letter from his master, the evil emperor, saying that someone dressed in the attire of the royal guards had appeared in the vicinity of the spirit vein, Wang Chong already had an ominous premonition. And now, everything had been verified. If he wasn't mistaken, the one who sent a seer to divine the location of the spirit vein and spread the news was a prince. The one who had Big Uncle Wang Jin write a letter to him was also a prince. The matter that Wang Chong worried about the most had finally happened. In this life, the matter that Wang Chong didn't want to be embroiled in was the War of the Princes. Vast Crane Pavilion Incident, Consort Taijin Incident. regional commanders incident. All of these incidents were enough to make one tread on thin ice and shatter one's bones. But none of them could compare to the War of the Princes. Throughout the ages, regardless of which sage was alive, the War of the Princes was always the most dangerous matter. As the saying goes, a single slip brings everlasting sorrow. And looking back, 100 years have passed. Of all the conflicts and disputes, the most intense and dangerous one was the War of the Princes. The ancient Yu passed down the throne to Bo-yi, but in the end, Yu's son killed Bo-yi and dismembered him. This was the War of the Princes. Any conflict that involved imperial authority was extremely cruel and cold-blooded. In the vast Crane Pavilion incident, the Wang clan was able to survive for many years despite their failure. In the Consort Taijin incident, the Wang clan was reduced to a commoner. The regional commanders incident was the one that suffered the loss of the empire, and it had nothing to do with the Wang clan. However, the War of the Princes, the moment the new emperor ascends to the throne, all of those who supported the opposing princes would be annihilated. Not a single tile would be left, and they wouldn't even be able to continue living. Even the wise Yu the Great, Bo-yi, who had chosen to continue the throne, was dismembered by his son, needless to say the others. Even the current Holy Emperor was the same when he ascended to the throne, so how could there be any exceptions? Toward the War of the Princes, Wang Chong had always been extremely cautious. If he could avoid being swept into it, he would try his best to distance himself from it. However, the spirit vein had caused Wang Chong to be swept into the most dangerous vortex of the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains. The first prince who stood behind Big Uncle Wang Zhen, and the mysterious prince who sent the seer to search for the spirit vein. Once these two princes were swept into the fray, Wang Chong was certain that more princes would come knocking on his door. Regardless of whether these princes agreed or rejected him, it would only spell disaster for him. In this crisis, there was no such thing as the right course of action, and there was no such thing as self-preservation. Doing it would be a mistake. The more he did, the more mistakes he would make. Even if he didn't do it, it would still be a mistake. Grasping the letter in his hand, Wang Chong felt an unprecedented weight weighing down on him. The boat will cross the bridge when it comes to it. For now, I can only take it one step at a time. Sighing, Wang Chong returned to the deflecting blade manor. What a powerful spirit vein. While Wang Chong was busy in the deflecting blade manor, he was oblivious to the fact that at the top of Vermilion Bird Peak, a domineering lady in red was currently standing atop a blazing martial halo, gazing in the direction of the deflecting blade manor together with an unkind nanny. Behind them were a dozen or so ladies dressed in palace attire. Every single one of these ladies possessed extraordinary cultivation, and even the weakest of them was at the true martial realm. In this training camp, they stood out like a sore thumb. Your Highness, this is a good opportunity. It's rare that we're in the Kunwa training camp, so we can't miss it. The cold and unkind nanny by the side spoke up. With a single glance, one could tell that she was a formidable person. Her fingers were thin and withered, but they had a golden sheen to them. With a single look, one could tell that she had practiced some special martial arts. Between the fingers of her right hand was a letter. This was the latest news. According to her instructions, a scout had already headed to the spirit vein to investigate. The news he received was that the spiritual energy in the spirit vein was extremely concentrated. More importantly, the range of the spiritual energy was extremely large. This news was more than enough to move one's heart. Such a massive spirit vein was more than sufficient to play a huge role in the War of the Princes. Since that's the case, we'll snatch it over. At the edge of the cliff, Princess Anai Huang raised her head proudly and spoke without any hesitation. The resplendent halo of light around her accentuated her beauty even further. Of course we'll snatch it over. However, that lad isn't simple. The old nanny suddenly frowned. Even though she had spent most of her time in the royal palace, and was usually by Princess Anai Huang's side, she wasn't one to keep her ears shut. Without thinking too much into it, the old nanny revealed the news she had gathered regarding that lad. I was still wondering what it was. But it turns out that he's just a fellow trying to please the crowd. Only my father would believe him. After hearing about the regional commander's incident, Princess Anai Huang said disdainfully. Besides, no matter how powerful the Wang clan is, can it possibly be more powerful than the royal family? I don't believe that he would dare to turn me down even if I asked him to. Besides, if he were to reject me, do you think that I'll beat him up until he agrees? I don't like to be rejected. As Princess Anai Huang spoke, she clenched her fists tightly, and a powerful aura burst forth from her body, causing the entire cliff to tremble. As Xian martial realm cultivators, every move contained great power. As a member of the royal family, she had the right to be arrogant. As a profound martial realm cultivator, even a figure like Abutong was nothing before her. Your Highness is right. No matter how powerful the Wang clan is, they are still the servants of the royal family. I'll bring your Highness over to take a look later on. If that lad dares to turn you down, I'll teach him a lesson in your Highness' stead, and have him hand over the spirit vein obediently. The old nanny suddenly nodded and revealed a bone-chilling smile. No matter what your Highness wanted, as long as your Highness said it, she would obtain it for you. Chapter 307. Gongzi, I've compiled the name list. Unknowingly, several hours had passed. The crowd outside gradually dispersed, and Zhao Jingdian walked in with a thick stack of name lists. Place it on the table. Seated before an ancient painting of the Han dynasty, Wang Chong gestured to the red sandalwood table before him. Just like in his previous life, the spirit vein had caused a huge uproar. The number of people who applied to join the Deflecting Blade Manor far exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. Even the men from Xinwei and Longwei camps had applied to join the Deflecting Blade Manor. Perhaps it's time to change the rules, Wang Chong thought. Wang Chong's original plan was to recruit talented individuals from the Kunwa training camp and help them reach greater heights. However, the arrival of the people from Xinwei and Longwei had changed Wang Chong's mind. Wang Chong suddenly felt that he should expand his original plan and include the people from Xinwei and Longwei as well. However, the requirements for the Deflecting Blade Manor hadn't changed. Wang Chong didn't intend to recruit ordinary martial artists. There were plenty of such people in the Tang dynasty. There were plenty of experts in the taverns in the capital who could fulfill his requirements. What Wang Chong wanted were those who possessed the ability to command, or those who possessed the potential to do so. In other words, what Wang Chong wanted were like-minded generals who could lead armies in battle in the future. Flipping to the top of the name list, Wang Chong began to recall the memories of his previous life, while checking off the names on the list. Xie Qingyan, from Longwei training camp. I have some impression of him. Isn't he a descendant of the Xie clan? He is quite famous in the capital, and I heard that he is a righteous person. I didn't expect him to be here as well. Wang Chong glanced at a name on the name list and fell into deep thought. The number of talented generals from Xinwei and Longwei camps were nowhere near as outstanding as those from the Kunwa training camp. However, some of them were not bad. Although Xie Qingyun's aptitude couldn't be compared to the 100 stars in Kunwa training camp, he was still an outstanding existence in the 3 great training camps. In Wang Chong's memory, he had reached the rank of a senior commandant, a high-ranking officer in the army. As a descendant of a large clan, he must have been influenced from a young age. His aptitude should be pretty good. What he lacked was the determination and hard work to improve himself. To be able to become a senior commandant, he should have some talent in commanding. If we can summon him to Deflecting Blade Manor and give him some help, he might be able to break through his shackles and reach a level he never reached in his previous life. Wang Chong thought to himself. There were countless possibilities in the future. As long as one tried, there would only be many possibilities. However, Xie Qingyun's reminder reminded Wang Chong of another Longwei training camp disciple. This person was of low birth in Longwei training camp. He was just the son of an aristocratic family, and his family did not seem to care much about him. However, for the sake of his family's reputation, he was still sent to Longwei training camp, even though he was the son of a concubine. This sort of thing was very common among the great clans. I found him Wei Anfang. A moment later, Wang Chong's eyes lit up. He had finally found this unassuming name in the crowd. The current Wei Onfang was probably in his most dire straits. No one in his clan valued him, and he didn't have much of a presence in Longwei training camp. He had even gotten into a conflict with his elder brother. If not for the fact that he was so obscure and unimportant, Wei Onfang might not have come to Deflecting Blade Manor. Lifting his brush, Wang Chong unhesitatingly underlined Wei Onfang's name. In Longwei training camp, Wei Onfang was definitely one of the more accomplished ones. The army he led had performed beyond imagination in several major battles. He was an existence that could loyally carry out plans and orders to an extraordinary degree. Every great general needed exceptional leadership skills. But more importantly, every imperial great general needed to be able to completely understand their tactics and strategies, and have subordinates that could carry them out perfectly and faithfully. Wei Onfang was definitely such an existence. His talents weren't too outstanding, be it in cavalry, infantry or archers. He was completely different from Sun Jiming and Chen Bureng. But as a loyal, perfect and nimble subordinate, Wei Onfang was an indispensable talent to every great general with grand ambitions. More importantly, Wang Chong knew that Wei Onfang was a late bloomer. His career in the Longwei training camp was nothing special. His meteoric rise only came after he left the training camp. Through the many battles, he was reborn and became one of the few rising stars of Longwei training camp. If he were to recruit him now, he would definitely become his most reliable comrade in the future. Jingdian, send this person an invitation. Tell him that he doesn't need to undergo the examination and can come here directly. Wang Chong pointed at Wei Onfang's name and said to Zhao Jingdian. Hearing Wang Chong's words, a hint of astonishment flashed across Zhao Jingdian's eyes. He truly couldn't tell what kind of ability this Wei Onfang had to have Wang Chong invite him to Deflecting Blade Manor, without even needing to undergo the examination. Furthermore, this was before the list of candidates had been approved. Yes, Gongzi. Even though Zhao Jingdian was doubtful, he still turned around and meticulously carried out Wang Chong's orders, preparing the invitation. After settling this matter, Wang Chong continued browsing through the books. Zhang Tuan, I don't have any impression of him. Su Tong. This person doesn't have a good reputation. I've heard of his name when I was messing around in the past. Huang Yanwu, give him a chance when the time comes. Shi Rongrong. Seeing that one of the names belonged to a female, Wang Chong pressed his forehead and felt a headache coming on. There were quite a few ladies in the Deflecting Blade Manor this time around. When Wang Chong was planning for the Deflecting Blade Manor, he didn't intend to recruit any ladies. Of course, Marchioness E was an exception. Furthermore, these ladies weren't just here to join the Deflecting Blade Manor. Wang Chong remembered quite a few of the previous slogans, and they were truly too much for him to bear. What a headache, Wang Chong thought. This matter had truly exceeded Wang Chong's expectations. It was impossible for him to simply reject all of them. Every single one of these ladies had powerful backgrounds, and there was no telling if there was a vicious character like Marchioness E among them. If they were to cause a ruckus, it would be a huge headache for Wang Chong. But to recruit ladies, this was something that Wang Chong had never considered before. Furthermore, there was another doubt in Wang Chong's mind. The spirit vein isn't bad, but why would so many ladies suddenly appear here? This is way too bizarre, Wang Chong thought. Calming himself down, Wang Chong continued browsing through the names below and marked them down one by one. After an unknown period of time, just as Wang Chong was in the midst of marking down the names, the soft voice of a lady suddenly sounded in his ears. Even though the voice was pleasant, it carried an air of superiority and arrogance. Where is Wang Chong? Who is Wang Chong? Hurry up and come out. Wang Chong lifted his head from the pile of documents in bewilderment. The voice seemed to have come from outside, but it didn't seem to be Marchioness Yi's voice. Boom! Before he could process what was going on, a deafening explosion sounded. The gates of the courtyard seemed to have been kicked open, and a powerful shockwave swept through the room. Even Wang Chong was affected by the shockwave. Pung pung! The sound of something falling to the ground could be heard. Other than wooden planks, there was also the sound of a human body. Without a doubt, Wang Chong knew that the guards at the entrance had been kicked away. Damn it, who in the world is it? Rage flashed across Wang Chong's eyes as he slammed the table and stood up. It was one thing for them to barge into the deflecting blade manor, but to even injure his guards. Pung! Opening the gates, Wang Chong was taken aback the moment he stepped out. At the main entrance, a group of young but aggressive women in palace attire and a cold, seemingly very powerful old nanny were blocking the entrance. In front of those women, next to the old nanny, there was a tall and slender woman with skin as white as snow, beautiful features, and a frosty expression. She was standing on a ring of pink light that was as dazzling as flames, and she was sweeping her gaze over the crowd in a bossy manner. Around her, the Imperial Army guards that Wang Chong had transferred over from Uncle Li Lin were kneeling around her with their heads lowered. "You are Wang Chong?" Hearing the commotion, the frosty woman immediately turned her head and looked in Wang Chong's direction, a haughty and lofty air about her. Wang Chong was taken aback by the sight of the lady. Wang Chong didn't recognize the lady, but Wang Chong recognized the resplendent martial halo beneath her feet. Even though Wang Chong had only caught a glimpse of it from afar on the night of the Gogurian's assault. Princess Enai Huang. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. In that instant, Wang Chong suddenly felt a bad premonition. "I am asking you a question." Unable to get an answer, Princess Enai Huang said impatiently. "I am. May I know what matter your highness has with me?" Wang Chong said as he walked down the stairs. Since you're the one in charge, that's for the best." Princess Enai Huang left the guards of the deflecting blade manor behind and headed straight for Wang Chong. Behind her, an old nanny with a cold expression and a group of maids in palace robes walked over. "It is Wang Chong's honor to have your highness grace us with your presence. May I know the reason for your highness's visit at this time?" Wang Chong calmly walked over and gestured to the guard at the side. "Bring a pot of tea over." "There's no need for that." Before Wang Chong could finish his words, Princess Enai Huang had already interjected. Since you know who I am, things will be much easier. I heard that you have a spirit vein in your possession. Hand it over." Her voice was firm and brooked no room for doubt. Pung! With just a glance, a palace maid immediately walked over and placed a blank land deed on the red sandalwood table that Wang Chong was drinking tea on. Chapter 308. The ominous premonition in his heart had finally come true. Looking at the deed and the red ink before him, Wang Chong's complexion immediately turned awful. Princess Enai Huang was indeed here for the spirit vein. He knew that the spirit vein would bring him great trouble, but Wang Chong didn't expect it to come so quickly. This was the first time that a princess of the royal family had appeared before him for the spirit vein. Even though Wang Chong knew that the spirit vein was a huge problem, he didn't think that the other party would be so shameless. She wanted him to hand over the spirit vein unconditionally, without doing anything at all. How could there be such a good deal in the world? While the spirit vein was a problem, if it was for his own benefit, he wouldn't mind handing it over. However, in Wang Chong's plan, the spirit vein was the key to changing the course of the war. Otherwise, Wang Chong wouldn't have gone to the extent of searching for the spirit vein right from the start. Furthermore, he wouldn't have handed over the spirit vein when he received the letter from First Uncle and found out that he was in danger of being involved in the war between the princes. But from the looks of it, it seemed like Gongzi Enai Huang wouldn't let this matter rest until she achieved her goal. But from the looks of it, it seemed like Nihuang Gongzi wasn't going to rest until she achieved her goal. Today's matter would probably be difficult to resolve. "Your Highness, your cultivation is already very high. What do you need my spirit vein for?" Instead of getting angry, Wang Chong stared at the brilliant halo beneath Princess Enai Huang's feet and asked calmly. Looking at the resplendent halo beneath Princess Enai Huang's feet, Wang Chong said calmly, "I only have one question for you. Are you going to hand it over or not?" Princess Enai Huang shot a glance at Wang Chong as she spoke with an authoritative tone. "Lad, I know that you are Duke Jiu's grandson, but since Princess Enai Huang has already asked about it, you should obediently hand over the spirit vein." "Kid, I know you're Duke Jiu's grandson. However, Since Princess Jiu has asked, you'd better obediently hand over the spirit vein. Lad, I know that you are Duke Jiu's grandson, but since Princess Anai Huang has asked about it, you should obediently hand over the spirit vein. That's right. What nonsense are you spouting? Since Princess Anai Huang wants you to hand it over, you should just hand it over. Cooperate obediently, and you won't have to suffer any physical pain. Behind Princess Anai Huang, the two palace maids spoke up impolitely, as if saying, "It's your honor that Princess Anai Huang is interested in your possession." Hehe. As for Princess Anai Huang, even the sage emperor would have to spend money to purchase his 3 meals a day, as well as the necessities that he needed. The princess didn't say a word, and wanted to take a spirit vein from me unconditionally. What if I say no? Wang Chong laughed angrily. That's not up to you. Princess Anai Huang sneered coldly, as if expecting Wang Chong's rejection. So, with a flash of light, Princess Anai Huang's silhouette flickered, and her snow-white hand, which was even more powerful than a pair of metal pincers, shot toward Wang Chong's wrist. Buzz! Wang Chong had been keeping an eye on Princess Anai Huang, and seeing that she was about to make a move, he immediately executed phantom steps. With a flash of light, 3 identical Wang Chong appeared before Princess Anai Huang. Princess Anai Huang had always been haughty, and she didn't think much of Wang Chong in this trip to the deflecting blade manor. As a result, she was caught off guard and missed. Princess Anai Huang was taken aback for a moment, but she didn't chase after Wang Chong. Instead, she turned to the old nanny and sneered coldly. "Nanny, how is it? Didn't I tell you? That lad refuses a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If I don't give him a taste of his might, he won't hand it over willingly. Hehe, your highness, don't worry. Leave this lad to me." A layer of frost appeared on the old nanny's face. Even though Duke Jiu was highly respected in the royal court, the princess had already spoken. Since Duke Jiu had already spoken, there was nothing he could do. Wang. Beneath the sky, a cold glint flashed across the old nanny's eyes. In that instant, Wang Chong felt as if he had been targeted by a snake, and he felt as if his skin was being pricked by needles. This is bad. Alarmed, Wang Chong immediately tried to retreat, but he was still too late. A withered claw swiftly morphed before his eyes, and just as Wang Chong was about to be captured by the old nanny, "Gongzi, be careful." In the blink of an eye, a figure suddenly lunged in between Wang Chong and the old nanny, with the cold expression on her face. "Jingdian." Wang Chong paled in fright. The person who had barged in at that crucial moment was none other than Zhao Jingdian, who had just completed the invitation letter. But given Zhao Jingdian's meager cultivation, how could he possibly be a match for the unfathomable old nanny? Peng. As soon as Zhao Jingdian crashed into the old nanny, he was immediately sent flying. "Ha, brat, are they your subordinates? From the looks of it, you seem to be very concerned about him." A sinister laughter echoed in the air. Seeing Wang Chong's reaction, the old nanny suddenly chuckled. Her right hand turned from a slap into a claw, and before Zhao Jingdian could even land on the ground, an invisible force pulled him right in front of the old nanny. With a single palm strike, the old nanny pressed him firmly under her feet. Hand over the spirit vein. You can take him away, princess, and I can pretend that nothing happened and leave immediately. Gongzi, don't agree to his request. Brat, if I were you, I wouldn't be so stubborn. The old nanny sneered coldly. She moved her right thumb, and a needle-like stellar energy immediately shot out from her finger and into Zhao Jingdian's body. This small needle didn't possess much power, but Zhao Jingdian couldn't help but cry out in pain. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. "Release him." Wang Chong halted his footsteps and bellowed furiously at the old nanny. There were many ways to torture people in the royal palace, and with just a glance, Wang Chong could tell that the old nanny must have experimented with some kind of torture method on Zhao Jingdian. As long as you hand over the spirit vein, everything will be fine, Princess Anai Huang said proudly. Also, don't try to escape. You won't be able to escape. Don't seek trouble for yourself. Wang Chong was furious, but looking at Zhao Jingdian in the hands of the old nanny, he couldn't help but hesitate for a moment. There was no way he could hand over the spirit vein. However, if the old man and the young man in front of him didn't get a satisfactory answer, they wouldn't let the matter rest. The reason why they hadn't made a move yet was because they were confident that they wouldn't be able to escape. If they couldn't obtain an answer, things might turn out differently later on. Wang Chong, I have 10 numbers. If you don't hand over the deed to the spirit vein, don't blame me for getting nasty. 1-2. While Wang Chong was still contemplating over the matter, Princess Anai Huang was already approaching with malicious intentions. Sneering coldly, she issued her final ultimatum. The temperature in the deflecting blade manor abruptly plummeted. On the other end, the old nanny's withered fingers tightened around Zhao Jingdian. Up till now, she was still trying her best not to embarrass Wang Chong out of consideration for Duke Jiu's face. But if Wang Chong still didn't know what was good for him, he would have to suffer a little. Princess Anai Huang, you are being too audacious. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the Holy Emperor? Wang Chong bellowed furiously. Even if I am to be punished, that's a matter for the future. Princess Anai Huang harumphed disapprovingly. 6. She had never been one to reason with others. This was what the nanny had said before they arrived. She had said that it would be best not to touch this brat if they could, leaving some face for Duke Jiu. It would be even better if they could force him to hand them over. But that wasn't what Princess Anai Huang was thinking. Counting from 1 to 10 was already her limit. If that lad still refused to cooperate, he wouldn't be able to blame her. I must make him suffer a little. Princess Anai Huang clenched her fists tightly as she thought. Wang Chong fell silent. Even though Princess Anai Huang didn't say anything, Wang Chong could sense the malice in her eyes. It's impossible for me to escape. Wang Chong stood there as thoughts ran through his mind. Even though he had only interacted with them twice, Wang Chong could tell that the cultivation of the royal princess and the old nanny had far surpassed the true martial realm, reaching an unfathomable level. Before him, the strength of the two of them was overwhelming. It seems like this matter won't end peacefully. Wang Chong's heart sank. In the face of absolute power, everything was useless. Furthermore, the young lady before him was a descendant of the royal family. Most restraints and restrictions were useless against her. But it wasn't his style to just sit and wait for death. Suddenly, an idea flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he had an idea. Princess Anai Huang, the spirit vein isn't of much use to someone of your cultivation. If I'm not wrong, you must be here for the second prince, right? I was wondering what you were going to say. Who doesn't know that the second prince is my elder brother from the same mother? If you're trying to pull some tricks, I advise you to give up on the thought. Flicking her finger, Gongzi Anai Huang said disdainfully. Right, it's 9 now. There's only one number left. Have you thought it through? As expected, hearing those words, Wang Chong's heart calmed down. Back then, he wasn't too involved in the affairs of the royal palace, so his knowledge of them was limited. He needed the other party to admit it personally before he could match them up. The second prince is indeed here for him, Wang Chong thought. The royal family was the most discordant in the world, and it was also the most scheming against one another. Princess Anai Huang could never have imagined that her casual words had opened up many secrets in Wang Chong's heart. If Wang Chong recalled correctly, the second prince had suffered from some kind of serious illness when he was 16 or 17. This illness placed him in an extremely disadvantageous position in the intense struggle for the throne. It was also due to this that his younger sister, Princess Anai Huang, sympathized with her elder brother from the same mother, and she was eager to help him. The reason why she was demanding the spirit vein from him was because of the second prince. However, Princess Anai Huang probably didn't know that the second prince's illness had long been cured, but he had never shown it to the other party. On top of that, he knew that Princess Anai Huang was favored by the second prince, so he had been hiding it from her and making use of her. But on the surface, the second prince had always acted like an elder brother, doting on Princess Anai Huang. Chapter 309. The second prince was simply too scheming, deceiving even his own younger sister. This made Wang Chong dislike him deeply. While this might be a means of survival in the struggle for the throne, it wasn't a valid reason to deceive everyone around him. It's impossible for him not to know that Princess Anai Huang was in the same training camp as me. Perhaps, even Princess Anai Huang's appearance in the Kunwa training camp was his intention. After the matter of the spirit vein was exposed, the second prince might have known that Princess Anai Huang would make such a move, which is why he didn't make a move. As these thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's mind, he recalled the reputation of the second prince, and the deeds he had done in his previous life, and the discomfort he felt grew. If he were to be embroiled in a power struggle, even the purest of princes would find themselves in trouble. This was also the reason why Wang Chong didn't want to get involved too early. Princess Anai Huang, do you think that you can help the second prince just because you obtain the spirit vein? Wang Chong coldly snorted. Instead of retreating, he strode toward Princess Anai Huang fearlessly. Regardless of whether Princess Anai Huang was aware of the second prince's true character or not, he had to find a way to get past this hurdle. Brat, what tricks are you up to? The old nanny was an experienced person, and she could tell that something was amiss. With a single look at Wang Chong, she knew that Wang Chong was up to something. But this time she was wrong. Haha, Wang Chong chuckled, paying no heed to the old nanny. Princess Anai Huang, do you know that General Li Yichao's army has already been defeated at the Black Mountain? And yet you are still in the mood to steal my so-called spirit vein? Wang. Princess Anai Huang had already made up her mind to ignore whatever Wang Chong said, even if his words were like lotus blooming on the tip of his tongue. But upon hearing the name General Li Yichao, both Princess Anai Huang and the old nanny's faces warped. Brat, how dare you lie to me? Princess Anai Huang's face suddenly turned cold, so Wang Chong's vision blurred, and before he could even react, he felt someone grabbing his wrist. This time, Princess Anai Huang was serious, and her speed was more than twofold. Wang Chong didn't even have time to react before he was caught. At this moment, Wang Chong finally understood why Princess Anai Huang was so confident that he wouldn't be able to escape, and why she wasn't anxious to deal with him. Wang Chong, don't talk nonsense here. How could General Li fail? If you continue to spout nonsense like this, I won't just ask for your spirit vein. Princess Anai Huang called out Wang Chong's name. Her eyes were filled with rage, as though a layer of frost had formed over them. In this trip to the deflecting blade manor, she had always maintained an indifferent attitude. But this time, Wang Chong could clearly sense that Princess Anai Huang was angry. This is a small lesson for you. Kachacha. Princess Anai Huang clenched her fingers tightly, and the strength she exerted made Wang Chong feel as though his wrist was about to snap. However, Wang Chong didn't even make a sound. He had been through far too much, and this little trick of Princess Anai Huang's was nothing to him. Princess Anai Huang, I'm just telling you a fact. It's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. Our Wang clan is a military clan, and we are more well-informed than others in the military. If you think that I'm spouting nonsense, you can take it as though I didn't say anything at all. Wang Chong sneered coldly, but the more Wang Chong behaved in such a manner, the more uneasy Princess Anai Huang felt. Even the old nanny by the side was starting to feel uneasy. Black Halberd General Li Yichao was a subordinate of the second prince, and he had an extraordinary relationship with the latter. If General Li Yichao were to fail in the north and lose his city, he would surely be severely punished by the Holy Emperor. In the Tang dynasty, the punishment for a general who lost a city was extremely severe. More importantly, if what Wang Chong said was true, even the second prince would be implicated. In the struggle for royal authority, this was a matter of life and death. To the second prince it would be a huge earthquake. In comparison, the matter of the spirit vein seemed inconsequential. On this point, Wang Chong was right. Your Highness, let's put the matter of the spirit vein aside for now. If what that lad said is true, then this is no small matter. The old nanny said grimly. Upon hearing the old nanny's words, Princess Anai Huang also panicked, and fell into a state of panic. Lad, if I were to learn that you are lying. Before Princess Anai Huang could finish her words, Wang Chong had already interjected. Princess Anai Huang, if I were you, I would rush back to the royal palace without wasting a single second. While it's still not too late, you should hurry up and snatch back the city from the Black Mountain. Otherwise, do you think that you will be able to help the second prince just by snatching back the spirit vein? Wang Chong sneered coldly. He wasn't lying. Everything he said was true. It wouldn't be long before the news of Li Yichao's defeat at the Black Mountain reached the capital. Of course, there was one thing that Wang Chong didn't tell Princess Anai Huang. The Turks weren't accustomed to staying in cities. Even if they managed to take down the Black Mountain, it would only be temporary. Fearing the might of the Biting Protectorate, the Turks would swiftly retreat after taking down the city. In fact, Li Yichao and the others wouldn't even need to launch a proper assault on the Black Mountain. Once the Turks left, they would be able to easily reclaim the Black Mountain. However, Wang Chong didn't intend to tell Princess Anai Huang about this. This proud, domineering, and overbearing princess, it would be good to let her panic for a while. As expected, Princess Anai Huang pushed away Wang Chong's arm, and without even bothering to bicker with Wang Chong, she rushed out of the room. Nanny, let's go. Brat, if I learn that you're lying to me, you should know what the consequences will be. Princess Anai Huang called out to the old nanny as she walked out. Peng! With a flick of her finger, a powerful burst of energy shot out, and a towering tree 20 zhang away from the walls of the deflecting blade manor was snapped in half. The massive crown of the tree fell down onto the courtyard of the deflecting blade manor. That woman's cultivation is incredible. Upon seeing this sight, Wang Chong's expression changed slightly. Princess Anai Huang hadn't used any of her strength at all. Just a light flick of her fingernail was enough to snap a tree 20 zhang away. Her strength was truly fearsome. Wang Chong knew that he would never be able to do such a thing. The group of people left as quickly as they had come. They had come ferociously, but when they left, they were burning with anxiety. In just a few moments, they had already disappeared into the distance. Gongzi! Zhao Jingdian stood up from the ground and stretched his arms. He was completely dumbfounded by the sight before him. His acupoint had been sealed by the old nanny, rendering him unable to move at all. He had intended to stop Wang Chong from handing over the spirit vein no matter what, but from the looks of it now, there was no need for that at all. Princesses of the royal family, noble members of the royal family, and so many of them had come as well. Every single one of them possessed extraordinary strength. He had thought that it would be difficult to resolve this matter peacefully. But who could have thought that Wang Chong would be able to send them away with just a few words? Jingdian, are you all right? Wang Chong walked over and asked concernedly. The methods used to torture people in the palace were no joke. Those methods were endless. For outsiders, it was unimaginable. Wang Chong had no idea whether Zhao Jingdian was injured or not. I'm fine. Zhao Jingdian shook his head. Other than the first time, he was still fine. Most importantly, Wang Chong's timely response had left them with no chance to use any of their techniques. Gongzi, Zhao Jingdian hesitated. Even though I know that you did it to save me, if they were to return and find out, we would be in trouble. Drinking poison to quench one's thirst might be quenched for a moment, but it would only deepen the poison. If Princess Anai Huang were to find out the truth, that would be the start of the trouble. Given Princess Anai Huang's standing and strength, the deflecting blade manor would probably be turned upside down, and no one would be able to live in peace. Ha ha ha, Jingdian, I thought that I was lying to them? Hearing those words, Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle. Is that not the case? Zhao Jingdian was taken aback. Of course not. Wang Chong shook his head with a smile. Seeing Zhao Jingdian's dazed expression, Wang Chong didn't bother explaining. Go and rest. I'll deal with this matter. After consoling Zhao Jingdian, Wang Chong walked out with widened strides. At the top of the deflecting blade manor, Wang Chong saw a familiar figure walking up the mountain. It seems like my worries were unfounded. It seems like I made a wasted trip. Marchioness Yi walked in with her signature spear on her back. She scanned the manor, before turning to Wang Chong with a perplexed look. You met Princess Anai Huang? Wang Chong smiled. Marchioness Yi nodded. She had rushed here as soon as she received the news. She was on friendly terms with Princess Anai Huang, and she was intending to act as a middleman to help Wang Chong. But who could have thought that she would encounter Princess Enai Huang leaving so anxiously, even more hurried than her? What kind of bewitching potion did you feed her? Princess Enai Huang isn't the kind of person who would let things go so easily. Marchioness Yi assessed Wang Chong from head to toe with a doubtful look. Given how anxious Princess Enai Huang was, it didn't seem like she had obtained the spirit vein. But if she didn't obtain it, how could Princess Enai Huang possibly let things go so easily? Marchioness Yi was truly bewildered. For the first time, she found herself unable to see through Wang Chong. Hee. Wang Chong chuckled dryly, but he didn't explain. I'll tell you about this matter in the future. For now, I'll have to trouble you to do me a favor. I've gathered a lot of names in my room, and there are quite a few ladies among them. I don't know a single one of them, so I'll have to trouble you on this matter. Marchioness Yi's arrival was timely. Wang Chong pondered for a moment. Since the deflecting blade manor wanted to expand its influence, it was impossible for it to have no ladies at all. Furthermore, rejecting all of them would bring some trouble as well. As long as he controlled the numbers, it would be fine. Pucci, you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.